flyaway resetting, runaway despawning, bench day-night cycle skipping, the Holovator methods, soft resets, fast hyperspace wild zone resetting, and many more. These are the methods Pokemon Legends EA players are using to quickly force in new spawns in attempts to capture shiny Pokemon, alpha Pokemon, or both. But which method is better? And what parts of Lumiose City is it worth using one method over the other? Well, in this video, I will be going through every single Pokemon in the game and identifying the fastest method to shiny hunt, alpha hunt, or SHALPHA hunt each and every one. This video will also compare the hunt times between the Switch 1 and Switch 2 versions, and in some cases, the different shiny hunt methods that are better suited for a specific version. For any hunt in the game that involves a load screen, I'll show the hunt times for both consoles. However, if no load screen is involved, I'll just show the hunt time for the Switch 2. The results shown throughout the video were performed on a Switch 2 on version 2.0 and above, with a completed save and DLC also purchased and completed. The Switch 1 edition of the game was also tested on the same versions with a completed save, but without the DLC purchased. Some of the load time results shown throughout the video are actually faster on versions of the game prior to version 2, especially on the Switch 1, which has suffered even slower load times since the update. So keep that in mind. This video has taken months of research, so I hope it helps you out. Now, in this complete guide, I'll start off with the Pokemon that can be found in Wild Zone 1 through to 20, and then we'll cover off all the other locations as well, such as the sewers, the underground lab, and of course the Lumiose City overworld. The final section will focus on the Mega Dimension DLC, the best ways to make donuts, and the fastest ways to hunt Pokemon in Hyperspace Wild Zones. For clarity, everything in this video prior to the DLC section is still relevant, and the methods I show are still the fastest for those who didn't or don't want to purchase the DLC, or those with the DLC but don't want to hunt in Hyperspace Wild Zones, whether that be because they don't want to do the continuous grind to farm rare donut ingredients that then only give you a very limited time to hunt what you're looking for, or due to the heightened motion sickness and vertigo some have reported experiencing while in Hyperspace Wild Zones. But for those with the DLC and who enjoy hunting in Hyperspace Wild Zones, then the DLC section near the end of the video might be for you. Now, a quick way to guide yourself in this video: if the Pokemon you're looking to hunt is in a Wild Zone, then you can jump to that part of this video to learn the best way to hunt it there, but I'll also include the alternative locations if the Pokemon can be hunted elsewhere. So if you're looking for a Pokemon not found in a Wild Zone, then you can jump to the sections of the video after Wild Zone 20, where you're likely to find it there. Now, before we begin, here's a quick explanation on how the different hunting methods in this game work. Fly resetting, or fast traveling, is where you go to your map and then fly to a location. Upon seeing a loading screen like this is how you'll know that all the wild Pokemon spawns around you have changed. The time it takes to reload into an area on the Switch 2 is roughly half compared to that of the Switch 1. However, the load times are slightly different depending on where you're traveling to. For a lot of the Wild Zones though, this is the best and fastest method. Runaway despawning is where you run 70 meters away from a Pokemon to despawn it, and then you run back towards it. Once you're back within the 50 meter radius of the spawn location, that's when the Pokemon respawns, but will have different stats, another chance to be shiny or alpha, etc. Again, this is smoother to do on the Switch 2 compared to the Switch 1, but the difference isn't as bad as fly resetting, for example. The bench resetting method is where you sit on a bench and change the time of day, which also resets spawns. And if the spawns are within range, you can continuously repeat the bench reset to reroll for a shiny, just like you can also do for fly resetting. Doing this on the Switch 2 takes somewhere around 14 to 16 seconds depending on what time of the day you're changing to, while doing this on the Switch 1 takes somewhere around 21 to 23 seconds, again depending on what time of day you're changing to. In a lot of situations, this method is slow due to the cutscene playing each time, but there are some situations where bench resetting is worth it. There are so many benches scattered across the game. I'll cover the most well-known and best ones where I can, but if you have any that you like using that I don't cover here, then please share in the comments. And finally, you have soft resetting, which is rarely used, but is an option for some specific hunts, especially those using the Holovator method, which takes advantage of Pokemon above you only having a minimum 10 meter spawn distance before spawning in. So depending on what Pokemon you're hunting, different methods will apply to different shiny and or alpha hunts. Now, a few things to note for those of you doing alpha or shiny alpha hunting, also known as SHALPHA hunting. Excluding the set spawn alphas, every Pokemon spawn in a Wild Zone has a 5% chance of appearing as an alpha Pokemon once you've obtained every Pokemon in that area. Note, you don't have to have caught a Pokemon specifically from the area you want to hunt, you just need to have registered it in your dex. Most Pokemon in the sewers and Lysandre Lab also have a 5 to 10% chance to appear as an alpha depending on the Pokemon. Pokemon found in Hyperspace Hyperspace Wild Zones have only a base 1% chance to appear as an alpha and abide by the same shiny odds as elsewhere in the game. You can, however, increase your alpha chances here to as high as 51%, and your shiny chances can be decreased to as low as 1 in 585 by making certain donuts. And most importantly, most wild spawns across Lumiose City are alpha locked, meaning they can never appear as an alpha in that specific location. For example, Budu can never be found as an alpha in the Lumiose City overworld, but it can be alpha hunted in Wild Zone 2 specifically. In fact, out of all the Pokemon you'll see in the Lumiose City overworld, excluding the set spawn alphas, these Pokemon here are the only ones that can be alpha hunted. But do note, every spawn is shiny huntable, however. For these specific spawns, I'll cover all the best areas to hunt these in the Lumiose City section of this video. All of the methods and information in this video has been manually tested by me, and in some cases with my Twitch chat, and then cross-referenced with the information on Cerebi.net, which Cerebi credits to these incredible data miners here. Definitely give them a follow on Twitter if you're not already following. But without further ado, let's start with Wild Zone 1. Wild Zone 1 features spawns of Weedle, Pichu, Scatterbug, Fletchling, Pidgey, Mareep, and Bunnelby with a set alpha spawn of Pidgey. Noting this is the only place in the game you can alpha or SHALPHA hunt Weedle, Pichu, Scatterbug, and Mareep, as all other spawns for the Weedle and Scatterbug are alpha locks, and Pichu and Mareep can only be found in this one location. For the Fletchling and Bunnelby, doing the fly reset method from Wild Zone 1 is your best bet to finding these specific spawns as an alpha or shiny. Noting though that there is a guaranteed alpha Fletchling spawn in Wild Zone 3. For Pichu, Mareep, Weedle, and Scatterbug, you're actually better off doing the fly resets from the Pokemon Research Lab and entering the gate on this side of the Wild Zone here, and then checking the spawns. If you wanted to hunt just Pichu and or Mareep, these are within 50 meters to the Pokemon Research Lab fly point, which allows you to just repeatedly spam fly again and again, and then check for a shiny every now and then, as once the shiny is spawned in, it will stay there unless you spawn in 10 other shinies, which is impossible to do from here. Now, an interesting thing to note here about Mareep, as I was writing the script for this video, data miner Anubis tweeted out that if you have not completed the side mission that gives you a shiny Mareep, then the Mareep spawns in Wild Zone 1 will be shiny locked. So take note of that before going for more shinies. Now for Pidgey, there is a guaranteed alpha spawn on the roof here, as well as spawns of Pidgey and Weedle. Now for the alpha Pidgey, if you go on the roof and are looking to shiny hunt it, its location is conveniently far enough away from this section of the roof where you can despawn it, and then you can respawn it if you run back towards the edge of the roof and hop down onto the gutter here. A little tedious if you accidentally fall down, but the ladder is here for you if you do. Do note though that there's also a set spawn Alpha Pidgeot in the Lumiose City overworld on this rooftop in Genre Sector 4. Now with Alpha Pidgey, while resetting at the Pokemon Research Lab does indeed put you within 50 meters of it horizontally, Pokemon that spawn above you don't spawn in unless you're within 10 meters of them vertically. A good way to test this for yourself is to fly to the Research Lab and save. Then enter the Wild Zone, climb the ladder, and check the Pidgey's level and gender. Close your game, reload, and then climb the ladder again and check the next Pidgey. It should be different, which ultimately tells you that it is in fact not spawned in if you are continuously doing lab resets without moving. But there is another great method to hunt this Pidgey by doing soft resets using the Holovator method. Let me explain. What you want to do, fly to the Pokemon Research Lab and run around to the left here until you get to this conveniently placed Holovator. This Holovator is horizontally within range of the Alpha Pidgey spawn location. Once you're standing on top of the Holovator, then drop a save. Now when you travel up the Holovator and reach the top of the roof, this is when the Alpha Pidgey spawns in, as well as this regular Pidgey on your left. Now if you don't get a shiny, then close your game and reload. Once you're loaded back in, instantly travel up the Holovator again, and rinse and repeat until you find a shiny. This method is about 7 to 8 seconds quicker on the Switch 2 over the Switch 1, so if you're on the Switch 1, maybe doing the runaway method on the roofs is the faster option for you. A variation of this method is to fly to the Pokemon Research Lab and then enter Wild Zone 1 and save at the bottom of the ladder. Climb it to spawn in the Alpha Pidgey and reset if you don't find a shiny. While climbing is indeed slower than the Holovator method, this strat does give you the option to climb up to the next roof to check the Weedle spawn. Given the fact that this Weedle is only one of 2 spawns that can be alpha, not just in this area, but in the entire game. So repeatedly resetting here and climbing the ladder each time is definitely the way to go if you really want to maximize your chances of finding a SHALPHA. You can also shiny shiny hunt the 2 regular Pidgey spawns while up here as well. But in all honesty, there are that many Pidgey that fly around Lumiose City, you'll probably encounter a non-alpha shiny by accident just by playing the game. Finally, there are some benches in the middle of Wild Zone 1 here that you can do some bench resets on should you like, but of course that won't reset anything on the roof, just the Pokemon on the ground. So if you're looking to give that method a try, sit on the bench here and then spam bench resets until you find a shiny. I still prefer the fly resets here personally, but it's whatever works best for you. And for the SHALPHA hunters among you, if you're in Wild Zone 20 in the post-game, the fully evolved alpha forms of some of these Wild Zone 1 Pokemon can be found here, including Raichu, Vivian, Talonflame, and Diggersby. Moving on to Wild Zone 2, and you'll find here Kakuna, Patrat, Barnacle, Staryu, Magikarp, and Budu, with a set alpha Magikarp spawn in the day and a set alpha Staryu spawn at night. Noting here that Wild Zone 2 is the only place in the game you can alpha hunt or SHALPHA hunt Budu. It is highly inefficient to solely hunt Kakuna here in Wild Zone 2, as the closest spawn to the fly point is around to the left in this tree here, and there's only one. Now, while you'd have better luck shiny hunting Kakuna by spamming fly resets at the cafe truck outside Wild Zone 7, the best place in the entire game to shiny hunt non-alpha Kakuna is by this bench at the bottom of the Holovator near Wild Zone 1, which I just used to demonstrate how to hunt alpha Pidgey. Now, if you travel up the Holovator and immediately jump down into the courtyard on your left, you'll find a tree that has 5 Kakuna spawns. These Kakuna are well within spawn range of the bench by the Holovator, so by repeatedly spamming the bench reset method again and again, you'll find a shiny here very quickly. Elsewhere, if you wanted a guaranteed alpha Kakuna, you'll find one in this little courtyard in Magenta Sector 9 near the Wild Zone 18 gate that has alpha Lopunny. Patrat is also highly inefficient to hunt in Wild Zone 2 for the same reasons as Kakuna, but thankfully there are several guaranteed spawns, including an alpha spawn just outside the zone. On the map near Wild Zone 2, fly to Cafe Cyclone. From here, you can quickly run around the side of the building while taking note of the set alpha spawn down below in case it's shiny, and then head through this little archway here. You'll find here a set spawn alpha Patrat, as well as 2 alpha locked regular Patrats. Rinse and repeat this method until you find a shiny. There is also this nearby bench in Vert Sector 3 that can reach the spawns of the Patrat if you wanted to continuously do the bench reset method. Give it a try and see what works best for you. You can also alpha or SHALPHA hunt Patrat in Wild Zone 4 or in the main sewers, but this method here is definitely the fastest. Now, Barnacle is also terrible to hunt in Wild Zone 2, and you're better off hunting it in Wild Zone 6 using the fly reset method, as there's a set alpha spawn and a regular spawns right next to the entrance to the gate. Or elsewhere in Lumiose City in Blue Sector 5, you can find 7 Barnacle spawns in this location here. However, these are alpha locked. Now, Magikarp you'll find as a set alpha spawn in the day in Wild Zone 2, while Staryu is the set alpha spawn exclusively at night. So doing the fly reset method here is very efficient if you're looking for the alpha specifically. Just continuously spam fly resets repeatedly here, and eventually you'll get a shiny in no time at all. By spamming fly resets here, you're also within 50 meters of the set spawn alpha Trubbish, located here in the Lumiose City overworld, which you can easily check by flying to Hotel Z, climbing the ladder behind it, running over the little bridge here, and then floating from this ledge over to check the spawn. So if you've been spamming fly resets at Wild Zone 2 for a bit, it's worth having a look, as you may have spawned in a SHALPHA. If you want a non-alpha shiny Magikarp or Staryu, you can do a quick run through the park, and you'll see a bunch of spawns depending on the time of day. Magikarp is also very quick to hunt in Wild Zone 6, spawning on the other side of the bridge to Barnacle. Staryu is also huntable in Wild Zone 10, but you will see less spawns hunting there, so Wild Zone 2 is best statistically. Also note that Staryu can also spawn in this area here in Blue Sector 9, however these spawns are alpha locked, but that shouldn't stop you from checking the spawns because you might find a nice surprise. And of course, the Lumiose City overworld alpha locking also applies to every Magikarp you will see there. They can be shiny, but not alpha. Now, Budu is kind of slow in Wild Zone 2, but if you want that alpha or SHALPHA, you have no other choice. Fly resetting just to see the spawn near the start is optimal, and if you do this repeatedly, you do see many spawns very quickly. If you do run through the zone, be careful not to scare this spawn away, as it takes 5 minutes to respawn. But there are at least 2 other Budu on the opposite side of the zone. One is guaranteed, and one shares a 50% spawn with Patrat to the left of the bridge. If you do choose to hunt Magikarp or Kakuna, etc. in this area, you may as well run through and look at the several Budu spawns on the far side of the zone, so up to you what you want to do. If you want a shiny non-alpha Budu, a great one for this is in Wild Zone 3, using the staircase method where you go up and down the staircase in this structure here to respawn all the nearby Pokemon. When you're resetting spawns by going up and down this staircase, you're also resetting the spawn of the Vivillon and the Budu that can be found on this roof here, despite not being visible while you're in the Wild Zone, but still close enough to spawn. So if you're lucky and not finding any shinies in Wild Zone 3, you might have just spawned a shiny Budu off to the side, as I learned on my Twitch stream. Ah! Sorry. And for the SHALPHA hunters among you, if you're in Wild Zone 20 in the post-game, the fully evolved alpha forms of some of these Wild Zone 2 Pokemon can be found here, including Barbaracle, Starmie, Gyarados, and Roserade. Roserade can also be found as a regular spawn around Wild Zone 20 as well. Now this does segue beautifully into Wild Zone 3. Here you'll find Sliggoo, Pancham, Litleo, Esper, Flabebe, and Pikachu, with 2 set alpha spawns of a Litleo and a Fletchling. Noting this is the only place in the game you can alpha hunt Sliggoo, Litleo, and Pancham. In fact, it's the only location they spawn, period. Sliggoo has 1 set spawn and then shares 2 other spawns with Pancham, with Sliggoo spawning 85% of the time, and excluding the alpha, Litleo has 1 set spawn and then shares 2 other spawns again with Pancham, with Litleo spawning 85% of the time. There's obviously also the set spawn alpha Litleo at the bottom of the staircase in the monument here, while alpha Fletchling can be found up above. As covered in my previous shiny hunting guide video, most of the Pokemon in this area you can just go up and down this staircase a bunch of times to respawn, with the Pokemon spawns in the area resetting each time you see the loading screen. If you use a rubber band or a bit of paper etc. to wedge the control stick downwards, you can do this method hands-free. This will very quickly net you a shiny or hopefully a SHALPHA. And it's not just the Pokemon within the Wild Zone that can benefit from the staircase method here. As just mentioned in the Wild Zone 2 section of this video, the spawns on the roof across from the top of the monument in Wild Zone 3 are within 50 meters and will be re-rolled each time you reach the top of the stairs. You won't see the non-shiny spawns from within the zone, as the visual limit for this is about 30 meters, but if a shiny does spawn, you will be able to see it, as shown here with this shiny Vivillon. There are some benches you can reset on here in this Wild Zone, but it's way too slow when you have the staircase. However, the staircase method won't work on some of the Pokemon, including the furthest Esper spawn, the furthest Flabebe spawn, and any of the 3 Pikachu spawns, as these Pokemon are all further than the 50-meter spawn range from the bottom of the staircase. The nearest Esper is just on the 50-meter radius and can be re-rolled, while with Flabebe you've obviously got your 2 nearest spawns here. For Pikachu, however, the best way to hunt it here in Wild Zone 3 is to continuously spam fly resets, as all 3 spawns are within 50 meters of the fly points. The 2 center Flabebes and the spawns of Sliggoo or Pancham can also benefit from this. Now in terms of Esper, it can also be alpha and SHALPHA hunted in Wild Zone 9 near the set spawn alpha Meowstic, but again, Wild Zone 3 is just so much faster. Now while a set spawn alpha Pikachu can be found in Wild Zone 6, Wild Zone 3 and 1 other spot in the Vert District are the only places you can hunt the non-alpha version. And of course, you also have the Pichu in Wild Zone 1. And in terms of Flabebe in Wild Zone 3, you're only going to find the red flower version here. There are so many non-alpha spawns of Flabebe scattered across Lumiose City, as well as 2 set alpha spawns. Skip ahead to the Lumiose City section of this video if you want to learn the best ways to hunt all the specific forms. Also, for those in the post-game doing main mission 40, Wild Zone 3 is where you'll find a level 70 alpha Steelix. However, this is sadly shiny locked. And for the SHALPHA hunters among you, if you're in Wild Zone 20 in the post-game, the fully evolved alpha forms of some of these Wild Zone 3 Pokemon can be found here, including Gogoat, Pangoro, Florges, Raichu, and Talonflame. Moving on to Wild Zone 4, where you can catch Patrat, Ghastly, Honedge, Spupa, Ekans, and Spinarak, with also a set alpha spawn of Spinarak. Noting this is the only place in the game you can spawn in alpha Spupa and alpha Spinarak, and oddly for a cemetery, there are no benches to sit on and reset. As mentioned in the Wild Zone 2 section of this video, your best chance to alpha or shiny hunt Patrat is by fly resetting at Cafe Cyclo near Wild Zone 2, and then checking the spawns in the nearby alley. There are several Patrat spawns by the graves in Wild Zone 4 during the nighttime, so if you haven't found any shinies in the area yet, fly resetting in this zone and having a quick run through may be more efficient for you. Again, you can also alpha or SHALPHA hunt Patrat in Wild Zone 2 and in the main sewers as well. Ghastly and Spinarak are everywhere in Wild Zone 4, continuously fly resetting to re-roll the Ghastly and Spinarak spawns in the first third of the cemetery is optimal here. However, actually entering the cemetery will result in more Ghastlies being seen, and you'll also be able to check the Spinarak on this building building here, which are too far away to be affected by spamming flyer resets. And of course, there's also the set spawn Alpha Spinarak in the middle here if you're looking to SHALPHA hunt. You can also try your luck at runaway despawning, especially on the Spinarak, by running 70 meters away to despawn them and then running back within 50 meters to respawn. But honestly, there's that many trees and gravestones that get in your way while doing this that fly resetting here is faster in the long run. Ghastly and also Haunter can also be alpha hunted in the main sewers. Some spawns in the sewers even having a 10% chance of being an alpha as opposed to the usual 5%. Runaway despawning them here is annoying though, as they do follow you as you try to run away, therefore slowing the despawning process down. So it's up to you whether you want to do fly resets for Ghastly in Wild Zone 4 or the runaway method in the main sewers. And elsewhere in the game, if you do find a Ghastly in the Lumiose City Overworld, just remember that they are alpha locked, but they can still be shiny. Back in Wild Zone 4, Ekans and Spuper can spawn in on the right and left as soon as you enter, so fly resetting here is best for them. There are at least 4 spawn points these Pokemon can appear in together across the entire Wild Zone, with Ekans appearing 80% of the time. Again, with fly resetting, just continuously spam fast travels on the map again and again, let's say for example 50 times, and then check all the Pokemon near the front third of the cemetery that spawn within 50 meters of you. This includes several of the locations that Ekans or Spuper can spawn. By doing this method, it should result with a shiny in no time. For Spuper, you can also shiny, alpha, or SHALPHA hunt the several Scatterbug spawns in Wild Zone 1 should you choose. Now, while there are 7 locations Honedge can be found in Wild Zone 4 at night at a 20% rate, it can be very easily hunted in Lysandre Labs. Jump to that section of this video to learn the easiest and fastest methods. Ekans and Arbok also have spawns in this center room of the lab, and these spawns are also by far the quickest to hunt in the game. Again, jump ahead to learn more. 4 Arbok spawns, which includes 1 set alpha, can also be found in Wild Zone 10, which some people may prefer to hunt there. And again, for the SHALPHA hunters among you, if you're in Wild Zone 20 in the post-game, the fully evolved alpha forms of some of these Wild Zone 4 Pokemon can be found here, including Gengar, Aegislash, Vivian, and Ariados. Now, Wild Zone 5, you'll find here Pidgeotto, Venipede, Electrike, Bellsprout, Abra, Pidgey, and Bunnelby, with a set alpha spawn of Bellsprout and Whirlipede. Now, this is the only area in the game you'll be able to find an alpha Venipede or Venipede in general, and it's the only place you can alpha hunt Abra. For Venipede, Bunnelby, Pidgey, Bellsprout, and alpha Bellsprout, the fly resetting method here is fast. However, most of their spawns are further than 50 meters from the gate, so you won't be able to continuously spam the fly resets. There are, however, some benches here you can repeatedly do the bench reset method on, which is another great option for shiny hunting. Fly resetting here is technically faster to load in more Pokemon, so play around and see what works best for you. Now for Bunnelby, you may have faster luck repeatedly fly resetting in Wild Zone 1, as you have a guaranteed spawn right at the gate, while hunting it here in Wild Zone 5, you will have a 50% spawn with Bellsprout to compete with. Now if you're looking for non-alpha shiny Pidgey in this zone, you do have some spawns, most times, but not all the times, down here near the alpha Bellsprout, but if you're looking for alpha or SHALPHA Pidgey, then the method shown in the Wild Zone 1 section of this video is best. For Venipede, you do have several other spawns you can do some runaway despawning with through the sewers here. You'll just have to take out the set spawn alpha Whirlipede first if you want to make it easy for yourself. By doing this method, you'll also be able to dual hunt the Bellsprout that spawned on the initial side of the sewer up the stairs here. For the alpha Whirlipede itself, use the same despawn, respawn, runaway method that you were doing for the Venipede, just don't get as close to the Whirlipede that you would have done with a Venipede, otherwise the Whirlipede will get angry and it will slow you down. You can shave about 2 seconds off this method by instead flying to the main sewers entrance, turning and checking the Whirlipede, and then fly resetting again. You won't be able to spam these, however, as the Whirlipede is more than 50 meters away, so you'll have to check every time. Now, if you go up these 2 sets of ladders near the alpha Whirlipede, you'll see 2 Electrike on the roof. Up here, you'll be able to get far enough away to despawn them using the runaway method on the roof by going up this ladder. You'll just have to jump back down to get close enough to respawn them. There is also this lone Electrike in this corner down below, just above the Venipede. Now, the great thing about this specific Electrike is that it's actually close enough to the entrance of the Wild Zone where you can do some fly resetting. So if you're repeatedly spamming fly resets here looking for a SHALPHA Froakie or SHALPHA Ampharos, etc. in the nearby Wild Zone 16, it is worth from time to time checking this Electrike spawn as well, on the off chance it's shiny. If you're looking for an alpha or SHALPHA that you want as a Manectric, you'll have better luck with a set alpha Manectric spawn in Wild Zone 9. Electrike and Manectric also have spawns in Lysandre Lab, and by far these spawns are the fastest to reroll for a shiny in the game. Jump forward to that part of the video to learn more. The Pidgeotto over here on the roof can despawn and respawn using the same method as Electrite, but again, you'll have better luck with shiny hunting the Pidgey down near the start of the Wild Zone, SHALPHA hunting the set spawn Alpha Pidgey in Wild Zone 1, or going after the set spawn Alpha Pidgeot in the Lumiose City Overworld on this rooftop in Jaune Sector 4. Saying that though, occasionally this Pidgeotto can spawn in on this low roof near the Wild Zone entrance, which actually is low enough vertically to be spawned in. So fly resets here could be a nice option at times. Finally, in this area of the Wild Zone is this single Abra here, which you can run away, despawn, and respawn by going over to the roof with the Electrike spawn. You'll probably want to knock out these two Electrike first so they don't constantly Thundershock you. Now, there are 3 other Abra, as well as some Pidgey in this Wild Zone on the other roof, and it's here you can take advantage of some soft resets. By fly resetting into the Wild Zone and then saving at the bottom of the ladder on your far left, you can then climb up, check your 3 Abra spawns as well as the Pidgey up here, and if not Shiny, Alpha, or SHALPHA, close the game and reload back in. Upon climbing the ladder again, you will get new spawns. While the method is slightly slower than doing the runaway method on the single other Abra, you are seeing triple the Abra using this method, so it's definitely worth it. Note that roof spawns aren't affected by bench resets that occur from below them, so you won't be able to spam the benches below to reset the Abra spawns above. And just to include it as a potential possibility that doesn't work, fly resetting to Centrico Plaza does put you horizontally close enough to the Electrite spawns to continuously fly reset, and flying to the Lumiose Sewers main entrance does put you horizontally close enough for Abra to do the same, but again, as explained previously, the roof Pokemon above you will not spawn in unless you're within 10 meters of them vertically. So simply fly resetting here does not work on these Pokemon. Also, for those in the post game doing main mission 40, Wild Zone 5 is where you can find yourself a level 70 Alpha Gallade. However, sadly, this is shiny locked. And for the SHALPHA hunters among you, if you're in Wild Zone 20 in the post game, the fully evolved Alpha forms of some of these Wild Zone 5 Pokemon can be found here, including Scolipede, Victreebel, Alakazam, and Diggersby. Moving on to Wild Zone 6, where you'll find Binacle, Meditite, Baneri, Magikarp, Houndour, Swablu, and Flaffy, with a guaranteed Alpha spawn of Houndoom, Binacle, and Pikachu. Note, this is the only area in the game where you can Alpha hunt Baneri and Meditite, and it's the only place where Meditite can spawn altogether. For Binacle, as previously mentioned in the Wild Zone 2 section of this video, Wild Zone 6 is the best area to hunt it in. All you do is use fly resets and check the Binacle, as there's 2 spawns as well as a guaranteed Alpha spawn. For Baneri, the fly reset method also works here for Alpha, Shiny, or SHALPHA hunting, thanks to the 3 immediate spawns on your left. Just remember though that there is a guaranteed Alpha Lopunny in Wild Zone 18. There are also 2 Magikarp spawns down the bottom here, just under Baneri, which are also quick to use fly resetting on, but you'll see way more Magikarp by running through Wild Zone 2 and doing fly resets there. Saying that though, all the Binacle, Baneri, and Magikarp here are within 50 meters of the entrance to the Wild Zone when you fly reset, as is the nearest Houndour spawn by this lamppost here, so continuously fly resetting again and again, let's say 50 times again, and then checking the spawns may result in a shiny very quickly. Now for Flaffy, there are 2 in Wild Zone 6 at the top of this Holovator. The fly reset in this zone for Flaffy is probably the most optimal, even though the spawns won't be there until you climb up the Holovator. Although you won't be able to fly immediately if you've aggravated the Houndour down below, so either knock them out beforehand or simply move on and check the Swablu spawns while you're up here. More on them in a sec. You could save at the bottom of the Holovator and check the spawns, reset, load back in, and repeat if you really wanted to, but instead, a more efficient Flaffy hunt is spamming fly resets at Wild Zone 5, and then turning around to see if you get a shiny Flaffy or SHALPHA Ampharos in the adjacent Wild Zone 16. Or you could simply hunt the Mareep as mentioned in Wild Zone 1. Now back in Wild Zone 6, if you continue along this roof where Flaffy is and climb up the ladder here, you'll see 3 Swablu. You can jump back down the ladder and use the runaway method here and just get the Swablu far enough to despawn, and then run back towards them and climb back up the ladder to check your new spawns. By doing this back and forth for Swablu, you'll also be getting far enough away from Alpha Houndoom below to despawn it and then respawn a new one every time. So be sure to check for any blue Houndoom shinies and Houndour shinies as you go. Sometimes you will have a Swablu get too close to the edge and you won't be able to despawn it, at which point it's best to simply do a fly reset. Time-wise, fly resetting, re-entering the zone, climbing up the building again, and checking the new Swablu spawns is best anyway, especially on the Switch 2, and of course by doing this, it'll also reset and re-roll the nearby ground spawns as well. There are also some Swablu and Altaria on the roof of Wild Zone 18 in the day you can use the bench reset method on. More info on that is in the Wild Zone 18 section of this video. Finally, in Wild Zone 6, you have the Houndour itself, the aforementioned set spawn Alpha Houndoom, the 2 Meditite on the battle court here during the day, and the set spawn Alpha Pikachu on the roof above it. For all of these Pokemon, your best bet is to continuously fly reset, but do it specifically from the cafe fly point. Now doing this, you'll mostly avoid disturbing the Houndoom this way, allowing you to check the Meditite and also the Alpha Pikachu. Noting again that roof Pokemon above you don't spawn in unless you're within 10 meters of them vertically, so continuously spam fly resetting to the cafe won't work on this Pikachu. You can try doing the bench reset in front of the Houndoom here, but honestly, thanks to this fly point within the Wild Zone, fly resets are just so much faster. Houndour and Houndoom can also be found and have a chance to be Alpha in Lysandre Lab in the room on the left just before the Beldum spawn room. Also, another cool way to shiny hunt this Alpha Pikachu in Wild Zone 6 is to make your way to this section of the map and stand where this staircase is. You'll be able to run back and forth to despawn and respawn the Pikachu here in front of you, so if you're just after the Pikachu specifically, this is a faster way to do it. And again, for the SHALPHA hunters among you, if you're in Wild Zone 20 in the post-game, the fully evolved Alpha forms of some of these Wild Zone 6 Pokemon can be found here, including Barbaracle, Medicham, Gyarados, Altaria, and Raichu. Next is Wild Zone 7, where you'll find Hippopotas, Audino, Vanillite, Kakuna, Floette, Roselia, Shuppet, and a set spawn Alpha Fletchinder. Note, this is the only place in the game you can Alpha hunt Hippopotas, as well as specifically Roselia, and also technically Floette. If you don't count the Flabébés, you can Alpha hunt elsewhere in the game. Now, starting with Alpha Fletchinder, you could do some fly resets for a shiny here if you really wanted to. However, the staircase method in Wild Zone 3 is probably easier if you want to hunt the set spawn Alpha Fletchling and then evolve it later on. Now, honestly, given the fact that the Alpha Fletchinder slows down your ability to fast travel out of Wild Zone 7, for those who don't have many of these shinies, repeatedly spamming the bench reset method here is the best form of spawn resetting. And you'll be within range of pretty much every Pokemon in this Wild Zone. You'll be able to cycle between the Hippopotas spawns in the day and then onto the Shuppet spawns in the night. But if you're after specifically Hippopotas only or Shuppet only, and wouldn't mind finding any shiny in the front half of the zone as you go, then spam fly resetting would be more optimal. There's also some Shuppet spawns in Wild Zone 15, as well as a set Alpha Banette spawn, so you do have options. If you specifically want Vanillite, you might see most people bench reset for these in Wild Zone 12. More on that in that specific section of this video. But in Wild Zone 12, you only have 2 Vanillite within spawn range of the bench, while in Wild Zone 7, you have upwards of 3, with 2 of the spawns here being guaranteed Vanillite and 1 sharing a 50% chance of spawning with Roselia. So statistically, Wild Zone 7 is better to hunt Vanillites. If you're wanting to go for a shiny Alpha or SHALPHA Roselia here, just don't bother. The 50% spawn here is extremely slow, and you'll have much better luck spamming fly resets at the gate of Wild Zone 2 to reroll the Budu to your left and then simply evolve it. Now, if you actually do the fly resets from the cafe truck number 3 instead near Wild Zone 7, you'll be close enough to this side of the zone where Floette or Kakuna can spawn if you wanted a quicker way to repeatedly do some fly resets to shiny hunt them. You can also monitor the only set spawn Alpha Swirlix in the game above the cafe as well. As mentioned in the Wild Zone 2 section of this video, the best way to hunt non-Alpha Kakuna in the game is by using the bench reset method by this Holovator near Wild Zone 1 to reroll the 5 nearby tree Kakuna spawns, while there's also the set spawn Alpha Kakuna just outside Wild Zone 18. Now with Floette, you'll only find a red or orange flower form spawn here when there is no Kakuna spawned near it, so again, it may be worth hunting for Flabebe instead in other areas. More on that in the Lumiose City section of this video. And with Audino, it's actually very hard to find it as a set spawn in this location in general, so I recommend hunting it using the fly reset method in Wild Zone 19. And for the SHALPHA hunters among you, if you're in Wild Zone 20 in the post-game, the fully evolved Alpha forms of some of these Wild Zone 7 Pokemon can be found here, including Hippowdon, Vanillux, Florges, Roserade, and Talonflame, with both Hippowdon and Roserade also a regular spawn seen around Wild Zone 20 as well. Now, Wild Zone 8, you'll find Krokorok, Sandile, Gible, Drillbur, Machop, and Numel, with a set spawn of Alpha Krokorok and Alpha Camerupt. Note, this is the only place in the game you can Alpha hunt Sandile, Krokorok, Numel, Camerupt, and Gible, noting you can spawn Alpha Crocodile, Garchomp, and Machamp in Wild Zone 20. Now, with all of these Pokemon listed in Wild Zone 8, the fly reset method is arguably the fastest, however, it is a little annoying, as pretty much anything in this zone will become aggravated with you when you get near it, subsequently slowing down your ability to actually fly reset. Repeatedly fly resetting here to reset quickly for a shiny will only work on the spawns in the front half of the zone, and won't affect Pokemon in the back, such as the Alpha Camerupts. But spawns like Machop, Drillbur, and hopefully some Gible, if they spawn in, can benefit from this. Also note that repeatedly spamming fly resets at Wild Zone 8 does reset for the nearby set spawn Alpha Garbodor as well, located here in the Lumiose City Overworld, which you can easily check by running behind you at the zone entrance, taking the first left here, and then turning left again down the alley near Wild Zone 19 to check the spawn. So if you're doing a lot of resets at Wild Zone 8, check every now and then, as a SHALPHA may have spawned in. Along with the Alpha Camerupt, Sandile, and Krokorok, both the regular and Alpha spawns, are most of the time outside the 50-meter spawn range from the Wild Zone fly points and won't be affected by continuously fly resetting. This isn't always the case though, as sometimes they will spawn within 50 meters and can be re-rolled. However, their position is inconsistent with each fly reset. There is, however, this bench here on the map that is bang on 50 meters away from the Alpha Camerupt, and also within the range of the occasional Sandile, Krokorok, or Alpha Krokorok spawns. So repeatedly using the bench reset method here will also easily re-roll for those shinies. It is still faster just fly resetting to the zone, entering it, checking the spawns yourself, and then repeating the process, so keep that in mind before deciding how you want to hunt. The Machop line you may even be better off doing in Wild Zone 12 using the bench reset method, or even some runaway despawning there, as there are 2 set spawns of Machop and also a set spawn of Machoke there. Skip to that section of this video to learn more. Now for Drillbur, I tested and compared hunting them in this Wild Zone compared to those that you can find in Wild Zone 14. For Wild Zone 14, manually checking the holes is much slower every reset compared to Wild Zone 8, as you have more ground to cover. Repeatedly spamming fly resets though at Wild Zone 14 will benefit the 3 front Drillbur or Onix spawns, as well as the other Pokemon that are within 50 meters of the fly point, while repeatedly spamming fly resets here at Wild Zone 8 will see even more Drillbur and other spawns benefit from doing this, so it's your choice where you want to hunt. Now you don't want to actively be hunting Drillbur as your main target though, especially in Wild Zone 8, as you'll be finding so many shinies of them anyway as a result of hunting for by far one of the hardest Pokemon to find in this game, Gible. Now Gible only has an 8% chance of spawning in holes in Wild Zone 8, while Drillbur takes up the other 92%. If you're feeling lucky here, the fly reset method here is quick, as anywhere from 3 to 5 holes are normally close enough to the fly point to be re-rolled for a shiny each time. Now this is the part of the video which features Gible spawn overloading, which was a method to guarantee yourself 3 Gible spawns. This was sadly patched though with the DLC 2.0.0 update, but worked on every version prior. I already had the method edited into this video prior to the DLC coming out, so I'll leave it in for those who refuse to update or prefer older versions of the game. If this doesn't interest you, skip ahead to the next section. Gible can be hunted much faster in Hyperspace Wild Zones anyway. Back to the video. To pull this method off, the main thing you need to know is that these 6 locations in the Wild Zone where holes can spawn are all connected and will be the holes that we're focusing on. Every time you enter the Wild Zone, you'll see that out of these 6 locations, 3 of the holes will be spawned in. There's obviously other holes in the center and further in the zone, but just ignore those. We're only focusing on these 6 spawn locations for these holes. Before attempting this exploit, reset the time of day to morning, as you don't want the day to tick over as you're in the middle of doing it. Now this method is different on the Switch 2 compared to the Switch 1. What I'll show you first is the Switch 2 method, and then I'll cover the Switch 1 method, which is much easier. So first things first, for those on the Switch 2, fly reset and keep checking the zone until you find an Alpha Drillbur. Of course, out of one of these 6 holes. You want an Alpha Drillbur specifically because these are a high enough level to know the move Dig. Next, lead the Alpha to the gate and exit, at which point save, close the game, and reload to reset the Drillbur's new spawn point to this location by the gate. Upon loading back in, re-enter the gate, re-aggravate the Drillbur, and dodge its attack until you see it preparing to use Dig. At which point, quickly exit the gate and wait for it to pop up out of the ground in front of the gate here. Once it does, save the game again, close the game again, and reload back in again. You'll be doing this a lot. Now, once you are loaded back in, have the Drillbur follow you up this path here until it gets far enough to break its leash, at which point it will start running back unaggravated towards its spawn location. Now, this is important. Once it gets to this exact step here, you want to quickly drop a save, and then close and reload the game once again. Resetting the Drillbur's spawn point to this location here is crucial, as it's the perfect distance to generate an overloaded spawn. With the Drillbur on this step, drop a pin on it and run away again, this time without aggravating it, until you get to somewhere between 66 to 69 meters away. For me, I like using 66 meters, others may prefer 67 or 68. Once here, save, close the game again, and reload back in. Once you're back in, run all the way back past the Drillbur and back into the Wild Zone, and check that out of the 6 hole locations mentioned, that 3 holes are spawned back in. If you only see 2 holes, you did the exploit wrong and will have to try again. But if you see 3, then exit the zone again, get the attention of Drillbur and lead it to the gate. Enter the gate when you're near enough, leaving the Drillbur outside of the gate, and then save instantly to make this its new spawn point, and then close and reload the game once more. Now, once you are loaded back in, drop a pin on the Drillbur and run 70 meters away from it through the center of the zone to despawn it. Now, if you trigger some of the holes in the middle, don't worry, just try to avoid any of the 6 main holes that we're working with if you can. Once the Drillbur is despawned, run back towards the entrance and take note of the holes. Instead of 3 holes spawned in out of these 6 locations, there should now be 4. If so, congrats, you've done the exploit correctly. You're now free to spam fly resets if you like, as one of these holes is now a guaranteed Gible. Just to prove it, here are the holes in the zone after fly resetting once, 3 of which are Drillbur and 1 is a Gible. As long as you don't knock out or catch any of these Pokemon from these specific holes, this duplicated spawn will remain indefinitely, even if you leave the area. You can now repeat this method 2 more times to guarantee 2 more Gibles. Again, make the time of day morning and fly reset until you find an Alpha Drillbur from one of these 6 hole locations, and then repeat all of the steps to generate a 5th hole to guarantee 2 Gible spawns from these 5 holes, and then repeat the entire process one final time to generate a 6th hole and a 3rd guaranteed Gible. Now, for those on the Switch 1, doing this exploit is so much easier and Alpha Drillbur is not required. Now, ideally on the Switch 1, you want to reset until you get 3 of the holes from the 6 locations all spawned in on the right of the zone, as you can see with these 3 here. Next, simply lead all 3 Pokemon to the gate's entrance and then exit the zone, save the game, close the game, and reload back in. Now, once loaded back in, leave the Pokemon at their new anchor point at the gate and run away from them until you get to somewhere between 66 to 69 meters away. Again, for me, I like using 66 meters, others may prefer 67 or 68. Once you're far enough, save your game and then close and reload once more. Now, once loaded back in, run all the way back to the Wild Zone where the 3 Pokemon should still all be located and enter the gate. Now, while those Pokemon should still be at the gate, you should also see 3 holes spawn back in. They might not necessarily be in the same location you found the 3 Pokemon that you led, but as long as there are 3 holes spawned in out of the 6 hole locations that we've been working with, then you know you've done the exploit right. If you do see 3 holes, then exit the zone, save and close and reload the game one final time. Once loaded back in, simply do a fly reset to properly activate the exploit. By doing this and re-entering the zone on your Switch 1, you'll see that all 6 holes are now spawned in, 3 of which will be a guaranteed Gible. Now, for both consoles, you have 2 options here. You can either spam fly resets to the Wild Zone, which on the Switch 2 is the slightly faster method to reroll for a shiny or SHALPHA Gible in any 3 locations from these 6 holes, or you can do some runaway despawning from certain holes, which is more optimal on the Switch 1 due to the longer fly reset load times, but still a cool method to do nonetheless on the Switch 2 as well. What you want to do first is fly reset until you get all 3 Gibles to appear out of the 3 holes on the right of the zone. Now, once all the Gibles have popped out of their holes and are chasing you, run to the opposite side of the zone from where they're spawned, but not too far away to despawn them. Once you go far enough, they will lose interest and run back to their spawn point, but stay there. They won't have any hole to go back into. Now, all you need to do now is run to near the edge of the zone outside of the 70 meters to despawn the Gible and run back towards within 50 meters to respawn them. Noting you will see the holes disappear and reappear as you do this. Dropping a pin on the middle Gible here helps figure out your rough distance. However, you may need to run upwards of 75 meters away to despawn all 3. You'll probably want to knock out the Alpha Camerupt and Krokorok here also to make it easy for yourself. Do note though that these have a 5-minute respawn time. Again, this runaway method is slightly slower to despawn and respawn the Gible than fly resetting on the Switch 2. However, at least you know that these 3 holes are their exact locations by doing this. Now, once you think you've done enough despawning and respawning to generate in a shiny, go and check the holes. You might find a shiny spawned in, or even more than one, like I did here in my first attempts. What was once one of the worst hunts in the game is now one of the easiest. Moving on to Wild Zone 9. Here you'll find Carbink, Esper, Fletchinder, Kadabra, Sableye, and Mawile, and also set alpha spawns of Meowstic and Manectric. Note, this is the only place in the game you'll find specifically a Kadabra. Now, first of all, with a Sableye at the bottom under the scaffolding here, you do have the option to drop a marker where this one on the right spawns here, and then do the runaway method under the scaffolding if you wish. You'll be able to despawn a new Sableye each time, but that does mean only hunting and despawning this one on the right here when you enter and not on the left. So if you're trying to be optimal here, the runaway method for Sableye is not that good. What you want to be doing instead is fly resetting from the gate and then checking checking the spawns on the left and the right, noting there are more Sableye spawns around either corner. Now with the set spawn Alpha Meowstic, as well as the Esper, you can do the fly reset method and then climb the front ladder here to see if it's shiny or not, or you can more easily use the runaway despawning method from this corner of the roof here, where Carbink spawns, and re-roll for SHALPHA Meowstic without leaving the roof. Its gender form seems to remain the same, but its level is changing, which gives you the confidence that the despawning is working. Now, if you're after a non-alpha shiny Meowstic or shiny Esper in general, then doing the stair reset method in Wild Zone 3 is definitely your fastest and easiest option. Now, in Wild Zone 9 for the set spawn Alpha Manectric on the top roof, you can't easily use the runaway method from the rooftops below as there's just not enough room. So your best bet for Alpha Manectric is to climb up the ladder underneath it and slowly and carefully make your way along the roof to the section where Mawile spawns. This roof will be far enough away to do the runaway method to despawn and respawn the Manectric in the hopes of getting a SHALPHA. The Mawile can be dangerous here while you're hunting Manectric, so knock them out if you need. Just bear in mind they do have a 3-minute respawn time. I still think hunting the Electrike in Wild Zone 5 is easier, while hunting both Electrike and Manectric in Lysandre Labs is by far the easiest method in game. Now with Kadabra in this area, you'll find one at the bottom of the ladder here and 2 on the roof. Now annoyingly for the Kadabra on the roof, you just can't get far enough away to despawn them using the runaway method, so for those spawns it's easiest here to do the fly reset method and climb back up the ladder each time. Noting again, by fly resetting and not going up the ladder, the Kadabra won't spawn in, so you do actually have to climb up and be within 10 meters of them vertically. So with that knowledge, a good strat here is to fly reset, head right to the bottom of the ladder nearest Kadabra, knock out any Sableye that stop you from saving, and then drop a save. Climb the ladder and check the Kadabra, and if they're not what you're looking for, then close the game and reload. Once you're loaded back in, climb the ladder again to spawn in 2 new Kadabra, as well as any other spawns within a 50-meter radius on the roof. Rinse and repeat until you find a shiny, alpha, or SHALPHA, whatever it is you're looking for. But again, I recommend using the runaway method on the Abra I covered in the Wild Zone 5 section of this video, where you'll be able to hunt 1 Abra using the runaway respawns, or 3 Abra spawns there using soft resets. Now back in Wild Zone 9, you'll also have the same runaway despawning issues with Carbink. You can get close enough to despawn and respawn the ones that appear on the central roof here, which you can see from this location from the Mawile roof, but again, you will have to be careful of the Mawile attacking you, so knock them out maybe just to be safe. The Fletchinder in Wild Zone 9, don't even bother hunting it while you're up here. There are so many other better options in Wild Zone 1, 3, or 7. And finally, in this area is Mawile itself. There are 3 spawns on this roof here, as well as the one on the bottom near one of the exits, but it's more efficient to focus on the 3 on the roof. What you want to do here first is knock out the Alpha Manectric. Bear in mind though that it's got a 5-minute respawn time. This will then allow you to do some uninterrupted runaway despawning and respawning to help you trying to get that shiny Alpha or SHALPHA Mawile. There is a set spawn Alpha Mawile in Wild Zone 17 you can more easily soft reset for. More info on that hunt is in that section of this video. And in terms of benches in Wild Zone 9, there is one down the bottom here, which can be used to reset spawns of Kadabra and Mawile on the bottom of the zone, but as noted earlier, any spawns more than 10 meters above you don't spawn in, meaning repeatedly using this bench to respawn what's on the roof in this Wild Zone will not work. As an alternative, there's also the top benches by the Alpha Manectric, which can help respawn some roof Pokemon. However, this one is just outside the spawn radius of a few of them, including Alpha Meowstic and the roof Mawile, so just be cautious of that. Also, for those in the post-game doing main mission 40, Wild Zone 9 is where you can find yourself a level 70 Alpha Pangoro. However, sadly, like the Steelix in Wild Zone 3, as well as the Glade in Wild Zone 5, this is also shiny locked. And for the SHALPHA hunters among you, if you're in Wild Zone 20 in the post-game, the fully evolved forms of some of these Wild Zone 9 Pokemon can be found here, including Carbink, Talonflame, Alakazam, and Sableye. Next is Wild Zone 10, where you'll find spawns of Slowpoke, Arbok, Watchog, Bellsprout, Kavada, Staryu, and Tynamo, with a guaranteed set alpha spawn of Sharpedo, Watchog, and Arbok. Noting this is the only place in the game you can alpha hunt Kavana, Sharpedo, and Tynamo, and also technically Watchog. Now for this zone, I'll cover individual methods to hunt the Pokemon that spawn here, but there's a great strat at the end you could use to essentially reset every spawn and hunt everything in the zone at once. Now if you're hunting specifically Slowpoke in Wild Zone 10, your best bet here is to use the fly reset method and continually respawn the 2 at the entrance here. If you're hunting Kavana, fly resetting is also the fastest here, so you may as well dual hunt the Slowpoke and the Kavana. You'll also see some Bellsprout spawns down here as well that will also benefit from the fly reset method. Now for the set spawn Alpha Sharpedo, runaway respawning is best, as you can run up to the side of the grass here to check the Sharpedo spawn, and then run far enough away to despawn it. The Kakuna prevent you from fly resetting, which is why runaway respawning here is optimal for the Alpha Sharpedo. Further down past the Sharpedo, you'll find the 2 Dynamo spawns here. Now for these spawns, you'll be wanting to do the runaway method through the back gate and running up the stairs about as far to this point here, and then run back to respawn them. You can also dual shiny hunt the Alpha Sharpedo here, but you'll just have to slightly enter through the gate, noting this will slow down your Dynamo hunts. Now if you continue up the stairs near the Alpha Sharpedo, you'll find some benches. If you haven't got any shinies down below in this area, including the Dynamo, then resetting on these benches is optimal, and you'll be able to spam these benches repeatedly to help you get that shiny Kakuna, Dynamo, Sharpedo, etc. But as previously noted, any spawns more than 10 meters above you aren't spawned in, meaning this bench won't work for the Pokemon above. The same rule also applies for the roof spawns if you use this bench just outside the Wild Zone, but this bench is also great to use repeatedly to reset spawns of Kakuna, Sharpedo, Dynamo, and the central spawns of Staryu and Slowpoke. But hunting Staryu in Wild Zone 2 using the fly reset method is much faster. Now back in Wild Zone 10, if you continue up the ladder, you'll see the Watchog spawns as well as the set spawn Alpha Watchog. Now you can use the runaway method along the roof here to easily despawn all the Watchog, and you can optionally knock out this specific Arbok here to make it easy for yourself to run back and forth more safely. Now you can also use the runaway method up here to dual hunt the 2 Arbok spawns in this corner here. Like with the Watchog, you can just run along the same roof and despawn the Arbok from this corner, and then run back towards them to respawn them to hopefully find a shiny. To put it more simply, go to the Arbok corner of the roof to reset the Watchog spawns, or go to the Watchog corner of the roof to reset the Arbok spawns. Now there are a bunch of other Watchog spawns if you continue around to the other rooftops behind the set spawn Alpha Arbok, but because of the constant climbing up of the ledges, it's just not as fast as hunting the Watchog previously mentioned. There are these benches in the back left corner of the zone here, but it won't help with the spawns on the east of the zone down below, like the Dynamo for example. There are some other benches back in the corner nearest the Alpha Watchog, which you can actually use to reset several spawns, including the Watchog as well as the spawns within a 50-meter radius under you, like the Dynamo in this case. Now in terms of the Alpha Arbok, this one is a little annoying, and you'll have to rely on its random movements to figure out how to despawn it. Now the 2 back corners of the roofs where those other Watchog spawn are simply too near to despawn the Alpha Arbok, so don't bother trying to run away from it here. However, the corner near the Alpha Watchog here, as well as the corner where the other Arbok spawn here, are just far enough to despawn the Alpha Arbok, but you'll have to keep an eye on its movements. If the Alpha Arbok slithers too far to the left, then the Arbok corner of the roof will be too near to despawn it. If the Alpha Arbok slithers just too far to the right, then the Watchog corner of the roof will also be too near to despawn it. So keep an eye on where the Alpha Arbok moves and make those adjustments accordingly. Also note, there's another set spawn Alpha Arbok in the center of Lysandre Labs if you want to hunt it there. Skip forward to that section of this video to learn how to hunt it extremely fast. But the best thing about doing the runaway despawn method on the roof in Wild Zone 10 is that by running back and forth between these 2 corners, you're also despawning and respawning every single spawn down below you, as the 10-meter vertical distance spawn limit doesn't apply for the Pokemon that are under you. So if you go to this far corner where the Arbok is, you're despawning all the Dynamos, the Sharpedos, etc. And if you go back towards the corner where the Watchog is, you'll have the Dynamo and Sharpedo, etc. spawn back in below you with new spawns, while also despawning the Slowpoke on the other side, for example, and re-rolling for those spawns. So by doing the runaway method on this roof, you're essentially shiny hunting the entire Wild Zone. Surrounding roof Pokemon will also be re-rolled using this method too, such as the Dratini spawn near the Arbok corner that has a 20% alpha chance, or the alpha-locked Fletchling spawns near the Watchog corner. So make sure you're looking everywhere for shinies. Just keep running along the roof and eventually you'll find a shiny in no time at all. And of course, for the SHALPHA hunters among you, if you're in Wild Zone 20 in the post-game, the fully evolved alpha forms of some of these Wild Zone 10 Pokemon can be found here, including Victreebel, Starmie, and Electros. Next is Wild Zone 11, which has spawns of Gyarados, Clauncher, Furfrou, Inkay, Slowpoke, and Stunfisk, with alpha spawns of Slowbro and Kloitza. Noting this is the only place in the game you can alpha hunt Clauncher, as this is the only place that they spawn. Now, if you're looking specifically to shiny hunt the Clauncher or the alpha Kloitza, your best bet is to fly reset here, and then enter the area just enough to see the first few spawns without triggering any Pokemon, and then reset again. By doing this method, you'll also see a Stunfisk spawn down below, and Furfrou just over the bridge here. You could also simply fly reset repeatedly to re-roll new Pokemon quickly, however that will only affect the nearest Clauncher or Gyarados spawn as well as the Stunfisk, so it's not that optimal to do unless these are what you're looking for. Now, if you do need much of the shinies or alphas that spawn in this specific area, you're almost better off fly resetting to the gate and then entering and running through the entire wild zone until you reach the far gate, where you can exit and repeat the process. By doing this, on your side of the canal, you'll see more Clauncher, Stunfisk, Inkay, and the occasional rare spawn Gyarados, and if you run close enough to the edge of the water, you'll spawn in the set spawn Alpha Slowbro, as well as some further Slowpoke and Furfrou spawns on the other side. Note that Inkay only has 2 spawns in this wild zone, and it shares these spawns with Clauncher. Clauncher appearing 70% of the time, Inkay 30%. For Inkay, a better place to hunt this is either near the front of the main sewers entrance here, where you can run down the first path and see the 2 spawns, as well as a Goomy, and then quickly fly back to the start point and repeat the process. Or you could also do it through the canal entrance to Lumiose sewers, where you can hunt the Scrolp, but also see this spawn for Inkay in this room here, as well as 2 additional Inkay spawns around the far corner. So the Inkay choice is up to you. Now, back in Wild Zone 11, Gyarados can spawn in 3 locations, but only at a 9% chance, with Clauncher appearing 91% of the time instead in these 3 specific locations. You're better off hunting the Magikarp in Wild Zone 2 or in Wild Zone 6. With Furfrou, you'll also have better luck hunting it in Wild Zone 19, as there's upwards of 10 potential spawn locations in that zone. Now, if you're looking to shiny hunt the Alpha Slowbro in Wild Zone 11, you can fly to the zone and then run back around the bridge over the canal to near the other entrance here to spawn it in, and then run backwards as far as roughly the NPC with the Tyranitar to despawn it. By doing this, you can also dual shiny hunt the Alpha Kloitza, so keep an eye out for that as well. You can also do some runaway despawning for Slowbro from this location, which will also re-roll the nearby Slowpoke and Furfrou, and likewise for the Alpha Kloitza and surrounding water spawns, you can also do some runaway despawning near these stairs and this slope from the park just outside Wild Zone 11, in Vert Sector 6, which occasionally turns into a battle zone at nights. Finally, there are a few nearby benches that surround the corners of Wild Zone 11, however, none of them are close enough to cover every wild spawn in the area, so if you wanted to continuously spam some of the benches that are nearby, just be careful of that. And further in the game, in Wild Zone 20, Malamar can spawn around the edge of Prison Tower near the entrance to the main fly zone, while Gyarados, Furfrou, Malamar, and Stunfisk have a chance to spawn in as an alpha under it. Next is Wild Zone 12, which has spawns of Delibird, Machop, Snover, Bergmite, Vanillite, Gogoat, Snorunt, and Machoke, with a guaranteed alpha spawn of Abomasnow and Avalugg. Noting for the Snover line, the Bergmite line, and most of the Snorunt line, this area is the only place in the game they can be alpha hunted. Now, without a doubt, if you have none of these Pokemon as alphas or shinies, then the bench reset method in this area is the most effective, specifically this bench in the middle right here. You'll respawn nearly everything in this zone, minus most of the spawns in the water, and if you continue to repeatedly reset, you'll have a high chance of getting a shiny, especially if you have the shiny charm. This location for Vanillite, however, isn't statistically the best place to hunt it. As mentioned in the Wild Zone 7 section of this video, in that zone there are 2 guaranteed spawns and a third 50% chance spawn for Vanillite that you can re-roll using the benches there, while in Wild Zone 12 the benches are only within range of 2 Vanillites. Even repeatedly fly resetting at Wild Zone 7 to re-roll just some of the front spawns would be much faster as well compared to the benches in either zone, so it's just something to keep in mind. Now, if you wanted a bit more variety in this area, you can do the fly reset method to quickly check the first Delibird spawn and a couple of Snover spawns here, which is indeed faster than the bench reset method if that's all you're after. Although it is fewer spawns that you're seeing compared to the bench reset method itself. Now, if you're after Machop or Machoke specifically, then you're better off doing the runaway method here, as you'll be able to easily despawn and respawn them faster than the bench method. Just try to stay closer to this building on the right so you don't aggravate the Snover or the Gogoats. For shiny Machop though, you'll likely run into one eventually in Wild Zone 8 if you're hunting for shiny Gible, as you'll be spawning in a couple of Machop each time you enter the zone. So if you haven't found a shiny Gible or Machop yet and you're wanting both, probably don't waste your time actively hunting Machop in Wild Zone 12. Now, back in Wild Zone 12, the runaway method is also faster if you just want to shiny hunt the Alpha Abomasnow specifically, but you'll just have to be quick in despawning it before it moves too close to the right, which may make it too hard to despawn without leaving the Wild Zone itself. Now, if you wanted to shiny hunt the Alpha Avalugg and the closest Bergmite and Vanillite that spawn near it, they are in fact outside of the spawn range from the benches within the Wild Zone, but there is a bench directly next to them outside the Wild Zone in this little area here. Spam the bench resets here and hopefully you'll find a shiny in no time at all. Alternatively, you could do some runaway despawning from these 3 Pokemon from outside the area here too, if that suits your fancy, or an even faster option, especially on the Switch 2, is to fly to this coffee truck just outside the area and then run up and check the Avalugg, the Bergmite, Bergmite and Vanillite spawns. The coffee cart is just outside the 50-meter spawn range of the Bergmite and the Alpha Avalugg, so you won't be able to continually fly reset like you would with a bench reset method, but it is the faster option if you're willing to put in the manual work. Also note the Spritzee or Swirlix that can spawn on the cart, as well as the two Magikarp that spawn down in the water here below, are alpha locked, but they can appear as shiny, which makes this fly location even better. And as always, for the SHALPHA hunters among you, if you're in Wild Zone 20 in the post game, the fully evolved alpha forms of some of these Wild Zone 12 Pokemon can be found here, including Delibird, Machamp, Vanillux, Gogoat, and Frostlass. Next is Wild Zone 13, where you'll find spawns of Phantump, Vivillon, Heracross, Pinsir, Weepinbell, and Scyther, and a daytime set spawn of Alpha Weepinbell, and a nighttime set spawn of Alpha Trevenant. Noting for Phantump and Scyther, this is the only place in the game they can be found and hunted, and also technically Weepinbell too. Now starting at night, the fastest way to hunt the Phantump, Pinsir, Scyther, and Alpha Trevenant is to simply fly reset to the gate, and then enter through the gate far enough to spawn in the Scyther near the back. Because the Pinsir are sleeping, you won't aggravate them as easily compared to in the day, so you'll be able to quickly fly reset again to spawn in the new Pokemon. Also note that these sleeping Pinsir are actually different spawns to the ones that you find in the day, similar to the sleeping Pyroar in Wild Zone 17. So if you knock out these Pinsir or find a shiny at night, for example, there will be different spawns in the day. Now you can use the same run-through method during the day to hunt for the Weepinbell and Vivillon in place of the Scyther and Phantump spawns respectively. Just watch out for the slightly more active Pinsir. If instead you're only hunting Pinsir, Phantump, or Vivillon, then these spawns are all within 50 meters, and you'll be able to spam fly resets repeatedly to re-roll for a shiny. Now there is this bench here on the map that is close enough to the Scyther or Weepinbell spawns that you can repeatedly use the bench reset method on, so that is another option for people who prefer to do that. Now for the Heracross spawns, you can use the bench located on the other side of the ladder here to spam some more bench resets on, as well as the other bench located on top of the roof to your left, which does affect the spawns below, as well as the nearby set spawn Alpha Spritzee. Alternatively, for the Heracross, you can also do the runaway method from outside the gate on the west side of Wild Zone 13. They'll visually despawn from view at about the 30-meter mark, so be sure to continue on and run at least 70 meters away from them to properly despawn them. Upon reapproaching the Wild Zone, you'll also be able to respawn in the Alpha Weepinbell by doing this during the day. But since this method does involve a lot of running, you may as well just use the fly resets from the start of the zone and simply run through, as you'll see more Pokemon doing it this way. By far though, one of the best ways to hunt everything in Wild Zone 13, as well as several rare surrounding spawns, is by utilizing the runaway method from on top of the roof. This building here serves as the best place in the game to hunt for the elemental monkeys, the set spawn Alpha Spritzee, and the 20% alpha chance nearby Larvitar, all of which I'll cover later in the Lumiose City section of this video. But it's also a great place to SHALPHA hunt the Weepinbell or Trevenants, as well as essentially every other spawn in the zone. Now, by running around the roof anti-clockwise, you'll be able to despawn all the Pokemon you see on the roofs, as well as the spawns in the Wild Zone down below. You won't see much of the non-alphas or non-shinies in the zone from up here due to being more than 30 meters away from them, but if a shiny or alpha down below does spawn in and you're within 50 meters, you will be able to see it. So by doing laps of this roof, you're basically hunting at least 4 or 5 Pokemon at once. Fly resetting for these alphas is obviously faster and requires less running, but this is another option nonetheless. And of course, for the SHALPHA hunters among you, if you're in Wild Zone 20 in the post-game, the fully evolved alpha forms of some of these Wild Zone 13 Pokemon can be found here, including Vivillon, Heracross, Pinsir, and Victreebel. Next up is Wild Zone 14, where you can hunt for Helioptile, Drillbur, Onix, Aron, Lairon, Excadrill, and Emolga with a set alpha spawn of Excadrill. Noting this is the only place in the game Helioptile, Onix, Aron, and Lairon can spawn in general, and it's the only place in the game Emolga can appear as an alpha. Now, for all of these Pokemon in this zone, the fly reset method is going to be your fastest option, but for some spawns, it isn't your only option. Now, it's highly recommended only hunting in Wild Zone 14 during the day and when it's sunny, as that's the only time Helioptile can spawn in. So if you're here any other time of day, it's really not worth your time, as you aren't getting the maximum amount of spawns. For Helioptile, it's actually one of the 3 Pokemon in the Pokedex which actually tells you this this little bit of extra info when viewing it. You can find Hawlucha, if you're lucky, in the left of the zone down the side here, as well as the opposite side of the zone on the right over here. Now, if you're lucky, occasionally one will spawn in within 50 meters of the Wild Zone entrance, so you'll be able to spam fly resets to reroll for a shiny. Just note though that this won't always be the case, at which point you'll have to manually check the further Hawlucha spawns yourself. As mentioned in the Wild Zone 8 section of this video, you're better off hunting Drillbur in Wild Zone 8, as you have less ground to cover than in Wild Zone 14, and you'll also hopefully find a shiny Gible there while you're at it. But for the Drillbur in Wild Zone 14, there are 6 holes where they can spawn in 70% of the time, while Onix, which you can also find here, spawn 30% of the time. Now, this is the part of the video which features Onix spawn overloading, which was a method to guarantee yourself 3 Onix spawns. This was sadly patched though with the DLC 2.0.0 update, but worked on every version prior. I already had the method edited into this video prior to the DLC coming out, so I'll leave it in for those of you who refuse to update or prefer older versions of the game. If this doesn't interest you, skip ahead to the next section. Onix can be hunted much faster in Hyperspace Wild Zones anyway. Back to the video. Now, in Wild Zone 14, the holes I want to focus on are the 3 holes that are located all in the front section of the Wild Zone. As mentioned, while there are 6 holes in the zone, these 3 front ones are all within spawn range of the fly reset point to allow you to continuously fly to reset spawns once the exploit is properly set up. It's easiest to start with this hole here in the far right corner, and it's also easiest if the spawn to help you perform the exploit is Drillbur. So step 1, first find a Drillbur in this hole here and lure it over to near the front gate. Get it to about this location here, which will still keep it on its spawn leash without it running back to where it came from. Run around a little bit here and avoid its attack until it uses Dig. As soon as you see it preparing to use Dig, run as fast as you can and put yourself into this far left corner of the Wild Zone here. As soon as Drillbur pops up from using Dig, it will not be aggravated anymore and want to go back to its original spawn location, at which point quickly save the game before it tries to run back to its original spawn location, close it, and then reload back into the game. You'll see once you are loaded back in that Drillbur's new central spawn point is now in this left corner. Next, run outside of the gate and circle back around to the front of the wall in the corner where Drillbur is. You can also see if it's still there by looking through the gap here. If the Drillbur tried chasing you out of the gate, don't worry, it will return to its new corner. Next, precisely drop on the map a pin where the Drillbur is, and then run along this path next to the canal until you get somewhere between 65 and 69 meters away from the Drillbur. For me, I like using 66 meters, others may prefer 67 or 68. Once you're positioned in the right spot, save and close your game again, and then reload back in. Now, upon loading back in, run back to the Wild Zone, enter it, ensure that your Drillbur is still in its corner, and then run and check if a new hole has spawned in the place where you originally found the Drillbur. If a new hole is in the right corner and the Drillbur you led to the front left corner hasn't despawned, then that should be all the indication you need that the exploit has worked. If this is the case, then save the game one last time if no Pokemon are attacking you, and then finally close and reload back in. Once the game has reloaded, do a fly reset to the Wild Zone to properly activate the exploits. Now, when you enter the Wild Zone and check the hole in the far right corner, you'll see that there are now 2 holes. And unlike a single hole, which again gives you a 70% chance of a Drillbur spawn or a 30% chance of an Onix spawn, by having a second hole, one will always be Drillbur and one will always be Onix. You're now free to spam fly resets to the zone should you wish to reroll for a shiny. You can even leave the entire area if you want, go somewhere else on the map, and then come back here later on when you want to hunt. Literally, the only way to get rid of this second hole is to catch or knock out the Pokemon, at which point, once the hole spawns back in eventually, you'll have to redo the exploits. Now, there is this second hole in the Wild Zone on your right that you can use the exact same method on to duplicate the spawns. Simply, again, take a Drillbur from here to the front left corner of the zone, do all your usual saves and reloads, run between 65 to 69 meters away, save and reload again, run back to the zone and check if the Drillbur is still there and that a new hole has spawned, and if so, save, reload the game again, do a fly reset, and congratulations, you now have 2 guaranteed Onix spawns. Now, as for the third hole located on your left, this can be a bit tricky, as the corner you normally lead the Drillbur to is too near the original spawn location of this hole. An alternative method to solve this is to lead the Drillbur to the gate and wait for it to use Dig. As soon as you see it preparing to use Dig, exit the gates, and upon doing so, it will actually dig its way outside of the Wild Zone. Once it does, save, close, and reload the game. Now, this time, what you want to do is head the opposite way out of the Wild Zone, ensuring Drillbur follows you. As soon as it gets to roughly the center of the canal here, it will reach the end of its leash and try to run back, at which which point save, close the game, and reload back in. Once you're loaded back in, drop a pin on the drillbit and run about 65 to 69 meters away from it northwest before saving, closing, and reloading. Once back in, run back towards the drillbit and make it follow you all the way back to the Wild Zone. When it gets close enough to the Wild Zone gate, it will break the leash again, at which point do another save, close, and reload. This will reset its center point to just outside the front of the Wild Zone gate. Now, once you're loaded back in, all you need to do is enter the Wild Zone, check to see if a new hole has spawned on the left, and then save, close, and reload the game one final time, and then fly reset back to the gate. If everything goes to plan, you'll have a new hole spawned in on the left here, meaning you now have 3 guaranteed Onix spawns that you can continuously spam fly resets on and hopefully get a shiny. If you do find a shiny, you can obviously catch it. It would just mean having to redo the exploit on that specific hole if you want to guarantee another Onix spawn. If you've already got all the shiny Onix you need and are going for a SHALPHA, but spawn in a regular shiny Onix again, you will also have to catch it or knock it out and redo the exploit, as once the shiny spawns in, it will always be the same Pokemon and not be able to be re-rolled for an alpha. Also, side note, when fly resetting here, check the spawns behind you, as you may find a shiny Magikarp, shiny Pidgey, or even a shiny Goomy, which are all within spawn range. Now, as you repeatedly spam fly resets for Drillbur and Onix, you'll also be respawning in the Aron, Lairon, and some of the Emolga as well. Wild Zone 14 is the only location in the game you can alpha hunt Emolga. Again, like any Pokemon in a Wild Zone, you only have a 5% chance of spawning an alpha in. Repeatedly fly resetting at the gate is best here for some of the front Emolga spawns that are within 50 meters, but there are more Emolga spawns slightly further in, so entering the zone and checking is at times a better option. You'll see them mostly perched in on the site offices on either side here, or on the shipping containers. Now, if you're looking for a non-alpha shiny of Emolga, another great location that guarantees you 3 Emolga spawns is near Wild Zone 3. Simply fly there and make your way up the Holovator to your left. Up here, there are 3 Emolga that spawn at any time of day that you can catch. I recommend saving at the bottom of the Holovator before traveling up, as if you don't find a shiny, you can reset the game, reload back in, and then travel up the Holovator again to check your new route spawns that only spawn in once you're within 10 meters of them vertically. The Holovator method we cover a few times in this video. Again, these Emolga are alpha locked, but they are easier to shiny hunt than the Emolga in Wild Zone 14. Finally, in this Wild Zone, you have Excadrill. As the spawns here are too far away to spam fly resets, you're going to have to enter the zone each time, check the spawns, which include 2 regular Excadrill with a 5% alpha chance, as well as the set spawn alpha, and then run back out of the zone and fly reset to repeat the process. Now, there is a bench located on this nearby rooftop here that overlooks the Wild Zone. If you play around with the Excadrill up here, you can visually see it spawn in at about 53 meters away from you. The bench here is obviously further away than this and won't be able to be used as an alternative reset to re-roll for a SHALPHA. You will also be within the regular 50-meter spawn-in limit of the back Drillbur or Onix spawn down below, and occasionally an Emolga spawn too that can be seen here on this building in the bottom right. So decide how you want to hunt here accordingly. And for the SHALPHA hunters among you, if you're in Wild Zone 20 in the post-game, the fully evolved alpha forms of some of these Wild Zone 14 Pokemon can be found here, including Heliolisk and Aggron, while some regular Aggron can also spawn in this section around the Prism Tower here as well. Is that shiny? Yeah! Moving on to Wild Zone 15, where you'll find Pumpkaboo, Shuffet, Scolipede, Haunter, Whirlipede, Beedrill, and Larvitar, with a guaranteed alpha spawn of Gorgeist, a daytime guaranteed alpha spawn of Beedrill, and a nighttime guaranteed alpha spawn of Banette. Noting this is the only place in the game you can find Pumpkaboo. You can also find non-alpha Trevenant here, where Haunter spawns, but only if you've activated Side Mission 105, and also only if you haven't completed it yet. Now, for Pumpkaboo, there are a few things to note here. Pumpkaboo comes in 4 forms: small, medium, large, and jumbo. Emphasis on forms. During the day, only the small and medium forms spawn, while at night, the large and jumbo forms spawn. Over the past few Pokemon games, the games have also included an internal size indicator for Pokemon, making it so some appear visually smaller than others, and some appear bigger. In Legends EA, when you catch a Pokemon, you'll see on its summary screen that it's classified classified as a certain size. With Pumpkaboo, and we'll use these two alphas as an example, while it will say extra large on the summary screen, the Pumpkaboo will still appear visually as one of its 4 forms. Again, small, medium, large, or jumbo form. If you compare the two alpha models here, you will see that there is a visual difference, even though the game still considers both as extra large internally. Likewise, if you catch a non-alpha Pumpkaboo, in this example, I'll use a jumbo form, easily denoted by its distinct deeper cry. While that is indeed its biggest form, the game will still identify its actual in-game size difference and assign it a size value. In this case, this jumbo Pumpkaboo is considered medium size. This contradiction is due to the clash between Pumpkaboo's forms and its in-game sizes, with Pumpkaboo created at a time in Pokemon's history back before visual size differences were a thing. Now, in terms of hunting Pumpkaboo, your first option is to repeatedly fly reset from the zone entrance itself, which will benefit the first couple of front Pumpkaboo spawns within 50 meters of the fly points. While it is quick, it's not as efficient as fly resetting instead from Cafe Ultimo, which is within range of the majority of the Pumpkaboo spawns, as well as every other ground spawn in the Wild Zone, presenting you a greater chance to spawn in a shiny easier. The only downside here is it's more easier to instantly aggravate nearby Pokemon upon fly resetting, which means you'll have to exit the zone quickly to be able to fly reset again. Bear in mind though that the game does treat day and night Pumpkaboo spawns differently here, and due to a programming quirk, if you were to change the time of day with a wild shiny Pumpkaboo spawned in, you will lose that wild shiny spawn, even though in most other cases in this game, the shiny should always be there, even if you change the time of day back to the time it originally was spawned in. So just keep that in mind. This quirk has happened in some other situations as well, such as with the Drampa spawns in Wild Zone 19. So to be safe, just catch your shinies when you spawn them in. In Wild Zone 15, the cafe is also fastest to check for a shiny of the Alpha Gourgeist, the daytime spawns of Scolipede, Whirlipede, and Beedrill, and the nighttime spawns of Shuffet, Banette, and Haunter. There is the runaway despawn method from this gate if you really wanted to, but it really isn't that optimal compared to flying to Cafe Ultimo repeatedly. The same applies with the bench reset method here in the Wild Zone, just don't bother. Now with Larvitar at the top of the zone here, not only is it easy, it's also the very best place in the game to hunt for its shiny. First of all, exit the Wild Zone and walk to this nearby Holovator here, and then travel up. Now from this roof, you'll be able to get 2, sometimes even 3 Larvitar to spawn in as standard size or an alpha. Simply run along the direction of this roof here to get far away enough to despawn the Larvitar at 70 meters, and then run back within 50 meters to check your new spawns. An alternative method you can try to hunt these spawns, which requires less running, is to soft reset for them. What you want to do is enter the zone when there are 3 Larvitar spawned in, and then lure them into one corner where you can knock them out all at once. For me, I like using Surf with Feraligatr. As soon as the Larvitar disappear and despawn, start a stopwatch. These Larvitar have a respawn time of 2 minutes, so once your stopwatch hits roughly 1 minute and 58 seconds, open your menu and drop a save, and then unpause to see your new Larvitar spawn in. If you don't find a shiny, then close out of the game and reload. Each time you reload back in, you'll get new Larvitars spawn in, sometimes 2 spawns, sometimes 3 spawns. Now this method is admittedly slower compared to the runaway despawning method, particularly for those on the Switch 1, but it is a much more hands-off method nonetheless. Now these Larvitar only have a 5% chance of appearing as an alpha, like anything else in the zone, unlike the Lumiose Overworld spawns of Larvitar that all have a 20% chance of spawning in as an alpha. So you'll have to weigh up either hunting upwards of 3 Larvitar at once in Wild Zone 15 with a 5% chance of them appearing as an alpha, or hunting a single Larvitar in the Lumiose Overworld with a 20% chance of them appearing as an alpha. If you want to see the method to hunting every Larvitar spawn in the Lumiose Overworld, then jump forward to that part of the video. Now on the roof where the Larvitar spawn in Wild Zone 15, this area is also one of the best places in the game to shiny, alpha, or SHALPHA hunt Hawlucha, which has a 50% chance to spawn in on this roof over here along with Pidgey. So if you're hunting Larvitar here, you might as well hunt the Hawlucha as well. There's also the Eevee further along on this roof here that can spawn on a sunny day, but any Eevee in this game that aren't found in Wild Zone 19 are sadly alpha locked. Again, if you want to see the best places in the Lumiose Overworld to hunt Eevee and Hawlucha, they can also be found later on in the video. But to summarize Wild Zone 15, fly resetting at Cafe Ultimo is best, while bench resetting could end catastrophically if you're shiny hunting Pumpkaboo specifically. And for the SHALPHA hunters among you, if you're in Wild Zone 20 in the post-game, the fully evolved alpha forms of some of these Wild Zone 15 Pokemon can be found here, including Gourgeist, Scolipede, Gengar, and Tyranitar. Now, Wild Zone 16, you'll find spawns of Phalanx, Flaffy, Starmie, Barbaracle, Medicham, Florges, and Froakie, with a set alpha spawn of Ampharos. Noting this is the only place in the game Froakie can spawn at all, and also technically Ampharos. If you don't count the Mareep and Flaffy, you can alpha hunt elsewhere. With Phalanx, it's worth your time repeatedly spamming fly resets from the Wild Zone 16 entrance. You'll visually see the two nearest spawns at the front of the zone without even moving, and two other spawns further in will be pretty much bang on 50 meters as well to be re-rolled for a shiny each time. There are more Phalanx that spawn further in the Wild Zone, but they're just outside of spawn range from this specific fly point. Now, while Froakie is essentially bang on the 50 meter distance mark from this fly point, you can't actually visually see it. So, as mentioned earlier in this video, the absolute ideal way to shiny alpha or SHALPHA hunt the Froakie, as well as Flaffy, the alpha Ampharos, Medicham, and Florges during the day, and Barbaracle and Starmie at night, is by fly resetting from Wild Zone 5 instead. If you turn around from the Wild Zone 5 fly point and look behind you, you'll see all of these Pokemon spawned in, including the Froakie, and if you don't see what you're looking for, spam fly resets a bunch of times from Wild Zone 5, and eventually something within that zone or Wild Zone 16 will shine. For some of these Pokemon, you may have faster luck hunting their pre-evolved forms, such as the Quick Mareeps near the Pokemon Research Lab near Wild Zone 1, the Barnacles from the Wild Zone 6 entrance, the Metatypes from the Cafe Fly Point within Wild Zone 6, or the nighttime Staryu spawns in Wild Zone 2. So play around and see which zone works best for your situation. There are no benches within Wild Zone 16 to reset on, and some nearby ones just aren't worth your time at all, noting Froakie is not within range of any of them. And also, running around to despawn the Pokemon from either inside the zone or from the outside is not optimal either, so fly resetting here is by far the best method. And for the SHALPHA hunters among you, if you're in Wild Zone 20 in the post-game, the fully evolved alpha forms of some of these Wild Zone 16 Pokemon can be found here, including Phalanx, Starmie, Barbaracle, Medicham, and Florges. Moving on to Wild Zone 17, where you'll find spawns of Klefki, Lampent, Skarmory, Pyroar, Diggersby, and Chespin, with guaranteed alpha spawns of Pyroar and Mawile. Noting this is the only place in the game you can find and hunt Chespin. Now, starting with Diggersby, repeatedly spamming fly resets here is best, as all holes are within range of the fly point. You do also have several benches down here too, if you prefer using that method. But why anyone would actively choose to make Diggersby the target of their shiny hunt here is unknown, when you have one of the rarest spawns in the game potentially appearing alongside it, Chespin. Now, this is the part of the video which features Chespin spawn overloading, which was a method to guarantee yourself 3 Chespin spawns. This was sadly patched though with the DLC 2.0.0 update, but worked on every version prior. I already had the method edited into this video prior to the DLC coming out, so I'll leave it in for those of you who refuse to update or prefer older versions of the game. If this doesn't interest you, skip ahead to the next section. Chespin can be hunted much faster in Hyperspace Wild Zones anyway. Back to the video. Now, Chespin is undoubtedly / usually the hardest Kalos starter to shiny hunt in this game, only having a 10% chance to spawn in one of these 3 holes, with Diggersby taking up the other 90%. I say usually because, as is the case with the 3 guaranteed Gible spawns shown off in the Wild Zone 8 section of this video, as well as the 3 guaranteed Onix spawns shown in the Wild Zone 14 section, you can also take advantage of spawn overloading in Wild Zone 17 to guarantee yourself 3 Chespin spawns each time you reset. Now, there are 2 ways to perform this exploit. One of them works exclusively on the Switch 2, while the other, easier method works only on the Switch 1. First up, here's the method that only works on the Switch 2. Now, to set up for this exploit, first, make sure you reset the time of day to morning, so the day doesn't tick over while you're in the middle of performing it. And second, be sure to knock out all the Pyroar in Wild Zone 17, and even the Skarmory if you can, as not knocking these out will make your life a lot harder. Bear in mind, the Pyroar have a 5-minute respawn time, so you'll need to be quick. But yes, once the zone is clear, run to any of the 3 holes near the start of the zone and lure out a Diggersby. Now, once you have a Diggersby out of the hole, lure it up the stairs into the center of the zone where Pyroar was, and lead it just far enough for it to break its spawn leash. As soon as you see it lose interest in you, quickly save before it runs back, and then close the game and reload. Once loaded back in, Diggersby's new anchor point will be in the middle of the zone here. You now need to lead it over to this gate on the side here, and get it as close to the gate as you can. Once it's in a spot roughly around the same as this, quickly exit the zone, drop another save, and then close the game and reload once more. With the Diggersby now anchored at this gate, drop a pin on it on the map, and then run down these steps across the canal, and and then up these steps until you get about 66 meters away from it. Again, anywhere between 65 to 69 meters should be fine. I just prefer 66 meters as it's pretty safe. Once you're in the right spot, save, close the game, and reload once more. Upon reloading back in, run all the way back to the Wild Zone and enter the gate where the Diggersby should still be spawned in. Now what you want to do, lure the Diggersby back towards where it came from. Once it gets to just about before the stairs, it will break its leash once more, at which point save the game one final time and close and reload back in. Now when you do load back in, you'll see the Diggersby is where you left it, but if you turn around and look at the spot where you found it, there should now be a new hole spawned in. If this is the case, then congrats, you've done the exploit correctly. If this isn't the case, then try again, you probably were about 1 or 2 meters off. But if a hole is there, then fly reset to the zone entrance to properly activate the exploit. Now upon doing so, you'll notice when you enter the zone that there are now 2 holes spawned in the one location where you grabbed the Diggersby. This extra hole is a 100% guaranteed Chespin spawn, when again, originally with 1 hole, it was just a 10% spawn. Now like Gible and Onix, this extra hole will remain indefinitely until you either catch or knock out one or both of the Pokemon in the holes, at which point you will have to repeat the exploit. You can even travel anywhere else in the game and come back to hunt it at another time. Now repeat the exploit 2 more times with the 2 other holes exactly the same way, and you'll end up with 6 holes, 3 of which will be Diggersby and 3 of which will be Chespin. A reminder that if you do find a shiny Chespin but are going for a SHALPHA, you will have to catch or knock out the shiny Chespin and redo the exploit. Otherwise, you'll be seeing the exact same shiny Chespin each reset. The same applies for Diggersby. Now, if you try this method the exact same way using a Switch 1, it will not work. And you'll find that when you lead the Diggersby back to its original spawn point, that no new hole has spawned back in. Thankfully, there is another way to do this exploit, which works only on the Switch 1, and you don't even need to go anywhere near the Pyroar. The method works exactly the same way as the one I just showed on the Switch 2, but instead of luring the Diggersby up through to the other end of the zone, you only need to lead it to the front gate near where they spawn. So on the Switch 1, first grab a Diggersby and lead it up to the front gate, ensuring it gets right up close before exiting the zone, and then saving, closing, and reloading the game. Upon loading back in, drop a pin on the Diggersby, and then have your character run this way along the road, which leads to the train station, and again, stop at around the 66 meter mark. Once here, save, close, and reload the game once more. Now, once loaded back in, all you need to do is run back to the zone where you should still see the Diggersby at the gate, but will also see a new hole spawned in. If so, save the game, close it one final time, and reload back in. Once back, simply fly reset to activate the exploit, and you'll see that you'll have successfully duplicated your holes, now guaranteeing you a Chespin each time. Repeat the process again with the 2 other holes on the Switch 1 to guarantee yourself 3 Chespin spawns. Out of curiosity, on both consoles, I also tried doing this method using the back gate up past the Pyroar here. However, on the Switch 1, it worked for the left hole and the tree hole, but not the right hole. I tried many times over many hours, it simply wouldn't duplicate. While on the Switch 2, it worked on the left and right holes, but not the hole nearest the tree. So to keep things easy, just remember the back left gate past the Pyroar equals the Switch 2 method, while the safer front gate equals the Switch 1 method. Elsewhere in the zone, as seen before, up in the middle here, you'll find spawns of Pyroar and Skarmory with a set spawn of Alpha Pyroar. Now these spawns are too far away to be re-rolled by fly resetting to the zone, so you can either do some runaway despawning from outside the zone here to re-roll for a shiny, which is arguably the fastest method, or you can use the benches here to do some bench resets on and re-roll for a shiny. Do note though that the daytime spawns of Pyroar are different to the nighttime spawns, so similar to the Pansear I showed off in Wild Zone 13, if you do find a shiny Pyroar in the day, you won't see that spawn at night, but it will still be there when you change the time back to day. Now finally, in this Wild Zone on top of this roof here, you have Klefki spawns in the day or Lampent spawns at night, as well as the set spawn Alpha Mawile. I've covered this a few times in this video, but I'll say it again. If you haven't climbed up onto the roof yet, any spawn more than 10 meters above you won't be spawned in yet. And you can use this knowledge to your advantage to easily reset for a shiny. So for this hunt, firstly do a fresh fly reset to the zone and then proceed to knock out all the Pyroar and Skarmory. The reason for this is that if you don't, you won't be able to save your game while they're attacking you. Now once the zone is clear, go to the base of the ladder, but do not climb it yet. This is now when you want to save. Now if you have the in-game music turned off and just have the Pokemon cries turned on, you won't at this stage be able to hear any noises at all, as again all of the Pokemon on the roof are not spawned in yet. At night though, you might hear some surrounding Ghastly just outside the zone. Now Now, when you climb up the ladder, you'll first hear the cries of Klefki or Lampent as they spawn in, followed up by the Alpha Mawile. If you don't find a shiny, then simply close your game and reload back in to try again. You'll respawn back at the base of the ladder, where you'll be able to climb up once again and check the new spawns. Also take note of the Fletchling spawn on the adjacent roof, which has a 10% chance to be a Hawlucha spawn. Now, it is technically roughly the same amount of time to fly reset to the zone, enter it, and climb the ladder each time, but the fact that Pyroar won't be respawning in at all while you do soft resets is a big plus for this hunt. Elsewhere in the game, Klefki is technically much faster to hunt in the main sewers, as is Litwick as well. More info on those hunts in the sewers section of this video. And for Mawile, you may also enjoy hunting it on the roofs in Wild Zone 9, as you'll find 3 spawns there. And for the SHALPHA hunters among you, if you're in Wild Zone 20 in the post-game, the fully evolved alpha forms of some of these Wild Zone 17 Pokemon can be found here, including Diggersby, Skarmory, and Klefki. Next is Wild Zone 18, where you'll find Noibat, Fennekin, Bagon, Altaria, Noivern, and Swablu, with set alpha spawns of Salamence and Lopunny. Note, this is the only place in the game where you can find the Fennekin and Bagon line. First up with a Bagon and Salamence on the street, repeatedly fly resetting here isn't that efficient, as the alpha Salamence is outside the 50-meter spawn range from the fly point and won't be re-rolled each time. However, you will get the occasional Bagon spawning in just within the 50-meter range. If you're going for the set alpha, then fly resetting and entering the gate slightly to view the spawn, and then repeating the process is undoubtedly the fastest way to re-roll for a SHALPHA. You can optionally also check the alpha Lopunny spawn down here too before fly resetting, but obviously that'll take slightly longer. You can choose to do the runaway method for Salamence from the gate on the other side of the Wild Zone, or the runaway method for Lopunny outside of this gate near the set spawn alpha Kakuna. But there's that much scaffolding that you can bonk into in both areas that will just slow you down, so simply sticking with the fly resets is best. For the rest of the zone, everything else takes place up on the roof. Now, I'll get to Fennekin in a sec, but firstly, in the daytime here, you'll find several spawns of Swablu, as well as an Altaria, and for the nighttime, you'll find several Noibat spawns here, as well as a Noivern. Now, in terms of fly resetting, forget it. It takes too long and too much effort to climb up the scaffolding each time to check the new spawns. And in terms of runaway resets, for most Pokemon, sadly, no matter what section of the roof you're on, you're simply too near to get to the 70 meters distance to despawn and respawn them. However, this is where the hunt for Fennekin comes into play. Just outside the Wild Zone up here are some benches, which you can use to do some bench resetting on. Now, once you do a bench reset up here, you'll get a new Fennekin spawn each time, which you can see most of the time depending on how it spawns from this corner here. By doing these bench resets, you'll also be resetting the spawns for the Swablu line in the day and the Noibat line at night. Further to this will also reset the spawns below you, as the 10-meter vertical spawn limit doesn't apply for Pokemon underneath you. So bench resetting here will re-roll the set spawn Alpha Salamence, the Bagon, the set spawn Alpha Lopunny, and even the set spawn Alpha Kakuna and regular Weedle just outside the Wild Zone. This is arguably one of the most effective benches to reset on in the entire game. Now, if you just want to hunt Fennekin up here, you have 2 options. The first is the runaway method. To do this method, you'll need to get over to this rooftop here, which you can get to by climbing this ladder and then floating on over. Now, this very corner of the roof here is conveniently just far enough away to despawn Fennekin using the runaway method, and is the only spot you can do it from. You'll have to do some platforming over the roofs each time to get near enough to the Fennekin to respawn it, and then obviously go back to the spot you came from to despawn it, but it is an option for those who prefer to do runaways as opposed to resets. The other method for Fennekin while up here is soft resetting, which is similar to what I showed off with Larvitar in Wild Zone 15. Fennekin's respawn time is conveniently for us only 1 minute, meaning that if you catch a Fennekin or scare one away, you'll only need to wait 60 seconds before seeing another one. Now, to set up for this, what you can do here is approach the Fennekin and scare it away, and as soon as it despawns, start a stopwatch. When the stopwatch gets to about 58 seconds, drop a save in-game while standing in a position where you won't rescare the Fennekin easily, and then watch as Fennekin spawns back in as its respawn timer hits the 1 minute mark. If you don't find a shiny, then simply close out of the game and reload back in. Each time that you open the game now, a new Fennekin will quickly spawn in, and of course, it'll be a different spawn each time, allowing you to re-roll for a shiny, alpha, or SHALPHA. It takes roughly the same amount of time on either console compared to bench resetting to see a new Fennekin, but it's a very chill way to hunt this Pokemon that only requires your right hand to re-roll for the next spawn. And obviously, by choosing to do the soft reset method, you won't be generating any other Pokemon in, such as the Alpha Salamence down below, for example. Now, regarding the Swablu line, a full day to night to day bench reset here to see new spawns does get kind of slow, so alternatively, elsewhere in the game, using the runaway method on on the rooftop Swablu in Wild Zone 6 will save you some time if you prefer hunting there. These long bench resets also apply to Noibat, so I recommend combining a Noibat shiny hunt into a Scrub or Inkay shiny hunt if you're hunting in the smaller Canal sewers, or combine them with a Scraggy and Inkay hunt if you're in the main sewers. More detail on all of these shiny hunts can be found in the sewers section of this video. And finally, Noivern can also be found in Lysandre Lab in 2 locations and can be very easily fly resetted for. And for the SHALPHA hunters among you, if you're in Wild Zone 20 in the post-game, the fully evolved alpha forms of some of these Wild Zone 18 Pokemon can be found here, including Altaria and Noivern. Moving on to Wild Zone 19, where you'll find Eevee, Furfrou, Drampa, Kangaskhan, Ordino, Clefairy, and Cleffa, with semi-guaranteed alpha forms most of the time, depending on the time of day, of Furfrou and Clefairy. Noting that this area is the only place in the game Eevee, Clefairy, and Cleffa can be found as an alpha. All other spawns of Eevee and Cleffa around Lumiose City are sadly alpha locked. Firstly, if you repeatedly fly reset from the zone entrance each time, you'll be respawning the guaranteed Kangaskhan spawn right at the gate, as well as 2 other spawns within 50 meters that 60% of the time will be Furfrou, while the other 40% is equally shared at a 20% rate by either Kangaskhan or Ordino. By doing these fly resets, there are several nearby Eevee locations that can spawn in as well between the hedges, which all have a 5% alpha chance. So the fly resets is definitely one of the best methods to hunt for Eevee shiny, alpha, or SHALPHA. Now, if you're looking to have all Eevee evolutions as an alpha or a SHALPHA, you're going to need at least 3 alpha or SHALPHA Eevees from this area, or 4 if you want the 2 Eevee gender form differences. The reason being, Wild Zone 20 has a chance for alpha spawns of all Eevee evolutions to spawn in, except for Espeon, Umbreon, and Eevee itself. Now, the same rule applies for Cleffa, which, like Eevee, can only appear as an alpha in Wild Zone 19 at a 5% rate, but even more specifically, only at night. You'll find Cleffa, Clefairy, and most of the time, the set alpha Clefairy spawn on the middle structure here. Now, these spawns are too far away to be re-rolled each fly reset, so you'll have to enter the zone and run up and manually check the spawns each time if you want to shiny or SHALPHA hunt them. An alternative method is to do some runaway despawning from the other side of the zone over here. While it may seem slower than fly resetting and checking the spawns, it is actually slightly faster. You'll have to run up close to the zone wall to see the spawns, but if you're lucky enough, you'll notice a shiny or even a SHALPHA pretty easily. Pride, it's so much you have to do. Shiny alpha Cleffa. Get it. Oh my god. Master Bullet. Oh yeah. Let's run. Now, an alternative method to hunt in Wild Zone 19 is simply to fly reset and then do a run through the center of it as you take note of the spawns and then exit out of the other side, where you can either do a fly reset to repeat the process or quickly run on ahead to the alley in front of you and check the alpha Garbodor spawn if you haven't found that as a SHALPHA yet. Now, elsewhere in the game, Furfrou can also be found in Wild Zone 11, while Ordino can be found in Wild Zone 7. But Wild Zone 19 is statistically the easiest place to hunt them both, especially if you're going for all the Furfrou trims. Now, from the outside of this zone, you can see into it from the roofs of some of the surrounding buildings, but given you're more than 30 meters away from most Pokemon to visually see them spawn in while viewing from the outside of the zone, running around on the rooftops trying to reset the spawns is simply not feasible. Finally, in Wild Zone 19 is Drampa, which can be found on the same structure in the middle of the zone as Cleffa, Clefairy, or the alpha Furfrou in the day, but only in the morning. Because mornings in the game only last a few minutes, fly resetting and checking the Drampa spawn from either inside the zone itself or along the zone wall from the outside, and then repeating the process won't last very long, as the Drampa spawn will soon disappear within a few minutes of hunting, and you'll be forced to reset the time of day to night and then day again to see more Drampa spawns. So like Fennekin that we just covered in Wild Zone 18, Drampa also has a 60-second respawn time. So ideally, the best way to hunt it here is to do some soft resets. Simply knock out the Drampa spawn and then start a stopwatch as soon as it disappears. Wait until about 58 seconds to open your menu and then save the game, and then exit the menu to see a new Drampa spawn back in. If it isn't shiny, then close the game and reload. Each time you load back in, a different Drampa will spawn, and hopefully, eventually, a shiny or SHALPHA. This is obviously a hunt more suited for the Switch 2 with the quicker load times, but at least by doing this method, the game will always remain as morning, and you'll be able to re-roll for a new Drampa as much as you want. Now, do do note in Wild Zone 19 that there are no benches, so you're going to have to rely on the methods already mentioned. There is this one nearby bench on the map here that is within range of a couple of Kangaskhan, Ordino, or Furfrou spawns, but it's not really that efficient compared to fly resetting and going through the entire zone itself, so sticking with those fly resets or run-throughs is your better option here. And for the SHALPHA hunters among you, if you're in Wild Zone 20 in the post-game, the fully evolved alpha forms of some of these Wild Zone 19 Pokemon can be found here, including most of the EV evolutions, excluding Espeon and Umbreon, as well as Furfrou, Drampa, Kangaskhan, and Clefable. The final Wild Zone is Wild Zone 20, which appears in the post-game after you roll the credits. Here, you'll find spawns around the broken Prism Tower of all of these Pokemon you see here, which, like any other Wild Zone, all have a 5% chance of spawning in as an alpha. Now, first up, if you enter the gate from the Wild Zone fly point itself, you'll be nearest to some water spawns as well as some grass spawns. Do note that for each reset, spawns of Squirtle, Totodile, Bulbasaur, and Chikorita only have a 15% chance to spawn in, while spawns of Dragalge, Malamar, Roserade, and Gardevoir have between a 15% to 35% chance of spawning, depending on the Pokemon and the location of the spawn. Repeatedly fly resetting here is great, as most spawns are within the 50-meter range, and it should hopefully net you a shiny pretty easily. Now, if you fly reset instead from the Centrico Plaza fly point, you'll be near enough to the entrance where you'll find Charmander or Tepig spawns at a 15% chance, or 35% chance spawns of Hippowdon or Lucario. Do note there aren't as many of these spawns near enough to the fly point to continually spam fly resets, so entering and manually checking the spawns will be at times more efficient. There's also this final fly point from the Pokemon Center here, which will put you nearest to the side of the zone where you can find Aggron, Scrafty, and Garbodor at a 30%, 35%, and 35% rate respectively. The fly point is not as near as the other two already mentioned, so you'll probably use this spot the least. Now, under the actual Prism Tower itself, there are 2 guaranteed alpha spawns that can spawn in, and the game will choose from a pool of 67 possible Pokemon to generate. There's too many to say out loud, so here's a graphic of all the Pokemon here that you can encounter. Some standouts here are Alakazam, Machamp, and Gengar, which you can find here without needing to trade with anyone, as well as every evolution, minus Espeon, Umbreon, and Eevee itself. So that is a massive help, considering the only place you can get Alpha Eevee in the game is in Wild Zone 19 at only a 5% Alpha chance. Now, the easiest standard way to reroll for the 2 set spawn Alphas under the tower is to simply fly reset to the zone and then manually checking the spawns before finding a safe place and flying out and repeating the process. There are also some benches here in the Wild Zone you can do some bench resets on if you really want to. Now, this is the part of the video which features Wild Zone 20 spawn overloading, which was a method to increase the number of set spawn alpha Pokemon underneath the Prism Tower from 2 all the way up to 6. This was sadly patched with the DLC 2.0.0 update, but worked on every version prior. I already had the method edited into this video prior to the DLC coming out, so I'll leave it in for those who refuse to update or prefer older versions of the game. If this doesn't interest you, then skip ahead to the next section. Back to the video. Now, this method is tricky and can result in only 5 alphas duplicated, or in some cases 4, and it's all to do with how the spawns work. Under the Prism Tower, there are 6 slots the alpha Pokemon can spawn in, and under usual circumstances, the game will pick from 2 of these 6 slots and spawn in 2 alpha Pokemon. Now, before I show you the successful method for 6, have a look at some of these examples, which resulted in less than 6 Pokemon spawning in. In this first example, if we're looking at the spawns under the Prism Tower from the Pokemon Center gate side of Wild Zone 20, the first 2 Pokemon that spawned in were the 2 further spawns, and after duplicating the spawns, the method which I'll show you in a sec, the next set of Pokemon that spawned in were the 2 most outer spawns. However, after attempting the spawn dupe again and going back to get what should be spawns 5 and 6, no further Pokemon spawned in, leaving me with just 4. Now, in this next example that led to 5 spawns, but not 6, you can see with this, the first 2 spawns are the front left and middle right, while the next 2 dupe spawns were the front right and middle left. Upon attempting to dupe spawns 5 and 6, I only got the front left spawn to spawn in a new alpha, leaving me with 5 alphas only, 1 short of the full 6. I tried this method 2 more times with spawns that crisscrossed on the map like the first example. As you can see with this second example, we started with the front right and middle left, while in this third example, we started with the front left and middle right. However, in the end, for both of these examples, we've ended up with 5 alphas again, proving that you want to avoid crisscrossing the spawns when attempting to go for all 6. The method that worked consistently for me, however, that always ended up with 6 alphas spawning in, was to reset until you get the 2 middle outside spawns. Once I successfully duped these middle spawns, I ended up with 2 new spawns in the back left and back right in this first example, which after duping these spawns led to Pokemon 5 and 6 spawning in the middle left and middle right. A full set of 6 alphas. I tried this method again, this time on the Switch 1, again starting with the middle left and middle right spawns, but this time for the second set of alphas I duped the middle left and right spawns, which after duping one more time resulted in 2 more alphas spawning in, giving me the maximum of 6. The crisscross spawns at the end here don't matter as you've already spawned in all the Pokemon you need. So what we can deduce from this is that it's essential to use the middle left and middle right spawns to help you get started with the exploit, and then with the second set of alphas have them either be the left and right back spawns or left and right middle spawns. The 2 front spawns for the second part of this exploit are probably safe too. I'm sure that there are other combinations that work and don't work, but for me these are the ones that I had the most consistency with. So if this interests you, then step 1, travel to the Pokemon Center fly point and then enter through this gate here, run up under the tower and then try and lure the 2 alpha spawns, whatever they are, back to the gate where you came from. Now as the alphas try and approach you, try and run to the gate and exit as they get nearer, and try and save the game when the 2 Pokemon are roughly near the water. Once you do this, close and exit the game and reload back in to set this location as the Pokemon's new spawn anchor. Once you're loaded back in, re-enter the zone and lure the Pokemon to the gate and then exit, noting they may try and run right up to the gate after you exit, which is exactly what you want. Once you get the Pokemon in position, which is pretty much right at the gate, then you want to save, close the game again, and reload back in again. Now once you're back in this time, drop a pin on the map exactly at the gate, and then run about 60 meters away from the Pokemon. With other spawn duplications covered in this video, we've normally gone about 66 meters, but for this method, 60 is a safer number to work with that won't be as close to accidentally despawning any Pokemon. Now once you're in position, save again, close again, and reload again. Once you're back in the game, run all the way back to the Wild Zone and re-enter it. Now disregard your 2 alpha Pokemon for a sec and run past them and back under the Prism Tower. Just be careful not to run more than 70 meters away from the anchor point of your original 2 Pokemon, as running more than 70 meters away from them will despawn them. You will notice though that there are now 2 new alpha Pokemon that are spawned in under the tower, similar to how a new hole will appear in Wild Zone 8, 14, or 17 while the existing spawn is still active. So now we have 4 alphas, but we want 6. So to increase the number of spawns to the maximum of 6, you'll need to repeat the process and lead these 2 new spawns to the gate where your original 2 spawns are. This will be a little trickier, but again, try leading them about halfway if you can, and then quickly run to the gate, exit it, and then quickly save, close the game, and reload to reset the anchor points of these 2 newer spawns. Load back in and enter the zone again to try and lure these 2 newer spawns to the gate once more with the 2 original spawns, taking care to dodge their attacks and try not to die. If you see the 2 new spawns finally deciding to run towards you, then exit the gate once more and see if they run up to the gate. And if they do, drop another save, close the game, and reload. Now from here, with all of these spawns up as close to the gate as you can, again, run about 60 meters away from the 4 spawns and save once you're at the right distance, and then close the game and reload once more. Upon loading back in, run all the way back to the Wild Zone and re-enter it, and then run past your 4 original spawns to check your 2 new spawns, which should be there waiting for you under the Prism Tower. Again, take care not to run more than 70 meters away from the gate, which will despawn your original 4 Pokemon. If you accidentally do this, then just close the game and reload before making any new saves and try again. Now, if you're under the Prism Tower, you got your 4 original spawns on one side and your 2 new ones on the other. What you need to do now is run far enough away from your original 4 spawns to de-aggravate them, but not despawn them, and then once that happens, try and run to an area near them where they won't get aggravated as you try and de-aggravate the 2 spawns under the tower. Again, all while avoiding running more than 70 meters away from any of them. It sounds tricky, but it is doable. You can even knock out some surrounding Pokemon here to make it easy for yourself if you wish. But if you got everything de-aggravated, stand in the middle of the path between your 4 original spawns and 2 new spawns to make sure they're all still within range, and then save the game one final time and then close and reload back in. Once back in, all you need to do now is fly reset, as is also the case with this exploit in Wild Zone 8, 14, and 17. No dying is required. Why would you want to do that to your character anyway? But after re-entering the zone, you'll see that the number of spawns appearing under the tower has increased to 6. These spawns can now be re-rolled each fly reset, essentially tripling your chances of finding a SHALPHA. And instead of having a 1 in 512 chance of finding a shiny based off 2 alphas that spawn in each reset, with 6 Pokemon spawned in under the Prism Tower, you'll find a shiny statistically every 1 in 171 fly resets, which is absolutely insane. Now, like the other spawn exploits in this game, these alphas will remain here indefinitely, even if you leave the area, and will only only despawn if you catch them or defeat them, at which point you'll have to redo the exploits. You could also choose just to duplicate up to 4 alphas, as it's easier to do than go the full 6, so choose what you want to do before attempting. But of course, for the players who don't like duplicating spawns, the 2 spawns for the SHALPHA roulette here are still fun to hunt. I definitely recommend the shiny charm though, if you want to truly maximize your chances. And that's it for the Pokemon that can be found in all 20 Wild Zones. Up to this part of the video has taken about nearly 2 months of researching and editing, so I hope you're learning a bit so far. But what about Pokemon that can't be found in Wild Zones? The next locations we'll cover together are both sewers, the Lysandre Cafe Lab, the Pokemon Research Lab, and the Lumiose City Overworld. Firstly, the sewers. Now, I've essentially mentioned all of the Pokemon you should absolutely be catching here throughout this video, but I'll repeat it all here for convenience. Now, there are 2 entrances to the sewers. The main entrance from Blue Sector 3 just before Wild Zone 5, and the smaller Canal entrance from Magenta Sector 8, nearish to Wild Zone 14. Let's start with the smaller Canal sewers. Your main reason for being in this smaller sewer is to hunt for Skrelp, and this will be one of the most low effort hunts you will ever do. Now, for the sewers and Lysandre Lab, you have to understand something about how things spawn. Firstly, you can't drop a pin here, so you can't see accurately how far away you are from a spawn, but in terms of the Canal sewers entrance here, we can use our judgment to deduce that this Skrelp is somewhere within 50 meters of us. However, with Pokemon in the sewers and in the lab that may appear like they're within range, they're not actually initially spawned in. For example, if you enter the sewers from off the street, this first Skrelp spawn won't be spawned in, meaning entering and exiting the sewers, let's say as an attempt to dual hunt with a Goomy that can spawn outside in the rain, won't actually be re-rolling for a new Skrelp. The same rule applies if you enter the sewer and then start spamming fly resets to the entrance. It won't be re-rolling for a new Skrelp either, as it still isn't spawned in yet, which you can easily tell by visually not seeing any spawn in front of you. And if you wanted further proof, drop a save and check the spawn, then close and reload the game without saving, and then load back in and check the spawn again. It should be different, as again, it wasn't initially loaded in the first place, despite being within a distance where it should be. What you can do though, and this is the same rule that applies to several other Pokemon in the sewers, as well as several Pokemon in Lysandre Lab, is walk closer to the Skrelp until it actually spawns in, and then fly reset to the entrance. Upon doing this, you'll notice a new Skrelp will actually spawn in this time without you moving from the entrance, and this will be a different spawn. All you need to do now is fly reset again, which you can easily do even one-handed by pressing plus YAA on your controller, and then rinse and repeat and expect a shiny in no time at all. Now seriously, while I was getting footage for this section of the video, it took me literally 1 minute to see the first alpha spawn in, but as I continued fly resetting, the alpha remained. So out of curiosity, I ran and checked the spawn here, and bam, shiny alpha Skrelp. Amazing. Now, a key component into making this exploit work, especially in Lysandre Lab, is the essential step of fly resetting to properly activate the exploit, but also trying not to aggravate the Pokemon you're hunting, as this can mess up the method. With Skrelp, this is easy, but for the Pokemon in Lysandre Lab, you'll need to be more careful. I'll cover those hunts in the next section. Now, in these sewers, there are also 2 other Skrelp spawns, but fly resetting and just focusing on the one single spawn at the entrance is still the fastest method. Saying that though, the Skrelp spawn here in the Ariados room has a 10% chance of being an alpha, while the other spawns have the usual 5%. So do with that information what you will. The Skrelp line can also spawn in the main sewers, but it is nowhere near as fast as the method just shown, so don't waste your time. And you really only need to find one shiny or SHALPHA Skrelp in here, as its evolution Dragonair can also be found in Wild Zone 20 as a spawn in the water outside Prism Tower, and also as a potential alpha spawn under it. But if this smaller sewer suits you, then feel free to hunt 2 Skrelp. Ariados in these sewers also spawns here at both a 5 or 10% alpha chance depending on the spawn. Me personally, I recommend hunting the set spawn alpha Spinarak or other Spinarak spawns in Wild Zone 4, and then simply evolve it later. Or you can try your luck in Wild Zone 20, where alpha Ariados has a chance to spawn. This smaller sewer is also a great place to hunt both the Inkay and Noibat lines, as you have 3 spawns of each. For Inkay, you've got 1 spawn in the middle section here, and 2 near the back, near the entrance to the room where you can find 3 Noibats. Scope out all 6 of these spawns and then fly reset and then repeat. You can also hunt 2 Inkay in the main sewers in the room near the entrance down here to the right, where there's also a Goomy. Simply fly reset to the entrance upon checking the spawns and then run back down the corridor again to check your new ones. Noting these spawns, as well as the Inkay in the center of the small sewers, are all too far away to benefit from the same exploit we used on the first Skrelp spawn. If you want more Inkay spawns, 2 more can be found in the main sewers further in on the map here, which you can combine into a hunt with several Scraggy. Inkay can also be found in Wild Zone 11, but it shares spawns with Clauncher and only appears at a 30% rate compared to Clauncher's 70%, so it isn't worth hunting there. Also note, like Dragougi, Inkay's evolution Malamar can also be found as a spawn in Wild Zone 20, both around the Prison Tower and also under it as an alpha. For Noibat, as mentioned previously, you can also hunt these using the bench reset method at the top of Wild Zone 18, but if you want one from the sewers specifically, then definitely check the 3 spawns in the far room of the smaller Canal sewers if also hunting Scrope or Inkay, or you can choose to hunt Noibat in this specific location in the main sewers here, a location we'll now focus on. The reason you would want to hunt the Noibat in the main sewers here as opposed to the smaller sewer is the fact that this is the only location in the game where you can alpha hunt or SHALPHA hunt Scraggy. By running up and down this hallway, which has a few Noibat spawns, you'll be able to despawn and re-roll the Scraggy. And upon rechecking the Scraggy spawns for a shiny alpha or SHALPHA, you'll be able to despawn the Noibat in the process. You can also then make your way around this corner to check the Inkay spawns, and then make your way back to recheck all the Scraggy spawns here, and then make your way back down the hallway where Noibat spawns to despawn the Scraggy and Inkay, and rinse and repeat. Noting the Noibat at the dead end in the corridor here has a 10% chance of spawning in as an alpha. The same goes for the furthest most Scraggy spawn in its respective dead end here. Now, if you just wanted a shiny Scraggy and didn't care about an alpha, then the best place in the game to hunt them is in the Lumiose City overworld at night in Rouge Sector 3, where you can find several spawns down the alley here behind the Pokeball Boutique. You can easily reset the spawns here by doing some runaway despawning, which time-wise is better suited for those playing on the Switch 1, or by resetting the spawns using the nearby fly points, which are better suited for those on the Switch 2 with the faster load times. So give it a try and see what works best in your situation. Bear in mind, Scraggy's evolution Scrafty can be found pretty easily as a spawn in Wild Zone 20, and it, along with Noibat's evolution Noivern, can also both appear as alphas under Prison Tower if you're lucky. So yeah, the smaller Canal sewers equals a good triple hunt for Scrope, Inkay, and Noibat, while the larger main sewers equals a good triple hunt for Scraggy, Inkay, and Noibat. Now quickly in the main sewers, Ghastly, Haunter, and Patrat aren't that great to hunt here. Runaway despawning the Pokemon here can get annoying as the spawns will often chase you, thus increasing your hunt times. So I recommend just easily fly resetting for Ghastly in Wild Zone 4, or the Haunter in Wild Zone 15, or even Alpha Gengar, which has a chance of spawning in Wild Zone 20. While with Patrat, as mentioned several times in this video, my favorite method is to fly to the cafe near Wild Zone 2, and then checking the 2 regular set spawns and 1 alpha set spawn in the alley there, and then quickly fly reset and repeat the process. The single Goomy spawn in the main sewers isn't that efficient to hunt here either, and I'll talk about Goomy more in a little bit in the Lumiose City overworld section of this video. But the remaining spawns to touch on here in the main sewers are Klefki and Litwick. Now Klefki here, you can use the exact same method as the front Scrope spawn in the Canal sewers. Like Scrope, Klefki, at least the nearest spawn here, is close enough and within 50 meters of the entrance. However, like Scrope, upon entering the sewers, it won't actually be spawned in yet, and you won't be able to hear its cry. But if you run from the entrance towards where the Klefki are, and then fly reset back to the main entrance, the quickest way being press plus YAA on your controller, then once you're back at the entrance, you will actually hear a faint Klefki cry in the background. This indicates it is now officially spawned in, and with every fly reset, you'll be able to re-roll for a new one. Occasionally, you will hear the louder alpha cry. So continue to spam fly resets here like you would with Scrope in the Canal sewers, and you'll find a shiny, hopefully, very quickly. Now, if you take the first left after Klefki, you'll find 2 Litwick spawns down the end of the corridor just past Patrat. Sadly, if you spawn them in and try to fly reset back to the start like you did Klefki, those spawns are just too far away, so you won't be able to easily reset for them like you would with Klefki. So using the runaway method to despawn and then respawn the Litwick is your best chance of finding a shiny or SHALPHA. You can choose to run to about here to spawn in the Litwick and then run back to despawn them. However, if you run right up to them, you'll be able to despawn the Klefki back at the top of the ladder near the entrance, which upon running back to that end of the corridor, you should be able to hear it spawn in as a shiny, even if you go near enough to it without having to climb up the ladder. So it's your choice if you want to hunt just the Litwick, which will be faster if Litwick is your aim, or combine it with a Klefki that will be slightly slower if you're trying to find alpha or shiny Litwick, but you will be hunting 2 Pokemon at once. Elsewhere in the game, you can also hunt the Klefki in the day or Lampent at night extremely easily by saving at the bottom of the ladder in Wild Zone 17 and then climb up, check the spawns, soft reset, and repeat. Go back to the Wild Zone 17 part of this video if you missed how to do that method. And of course, Klefki and Litwick's final evolution Chandelure can also potentially both be found as alphas under Prism Tower in Wild Zone 20 as well. Next up is Lysandre Lab, located within Lysandre Cafe. Now firstly, you'll find 2 Ekans in the center room of the lab here, as well as a set spawn Alpha Arbok. And the reason I'm starting with these 2 Pokemon in the lab is that this hunt will use a similar method to what we just showed with Scrope and Klefki in the sewers section, which involves first spawning in the Ekans and Arbok and then fly resetting to keep the spawns active and then be able to re-roll them for a shiny or a SHALPHA. So the method here, first enter the lab and stand on this warp point here. You may hear some nearby Pokemon spawned in, but you won't hear the Ekans and Arbok just yet, even though they're technically within 50 meters of you. Now use this warp point and travel to the very back area where you can hunt Honedge. More on them in a minute. Once you're at the back of the lab, run past the Honedge and Deblade and run down this corridor until you get to the room with the Houndoom in it. Once you're here, you want to knock the Houndoom out just to make fly resetting easier in a second. Follow this grey path into the next room and then turn right. Now here you want to hug the wall as close as you can and sneak close to the doorway so you don't aggravate the Ekans or the Arbok as they spawn in, as again, aggravating the Pokemon can cause this method to not work. But from this doorway, you'll see that these 2 Ekans and 1 Alpha Arbok have now spawned in. Now from here, fly reset back to the front entrance of the lab, and once back here, run up to the warp point once again. Interestingly, you will now be able to hear the Ekans and Arbok spawns in the background, something that didn't occur before. All you need to do now is continue to spam A to warp to the back of the lab near the Honedge to despawn the Ekans and Arbok, and then warp back to the front of the lab to re-roll for the new Ekans and Arbok spawns, which wouldn't be possible if we didn't initially spawn in the Ekans and Arbok visually first and then fly reset. Continue spamming A for a little while, and if you want to check the spawns, then run back down to the back corridor again and walk up to near the doorway where the Ekans and Arbok are located. If there's no shiny, then fly reset back to the front of the lab and start warping back and forth again. And if there is a shiny, then congratulations, you've successfully completed the first of many spawn manipulations in this lab. Now, if at any point you leave the lab and re-enter, the spawns will have disappeared and you'll have to redo this method to shiny hunt again. Now, from the front of the lab in the room on your right, you'll find a Houndoom, and if you go to the left side from the entrance, you'll find a Noivern in this little area on the left, as well as the Houndour and Houndoom in the next room over. All of these Pokemon you can simply spawn in like you would have done the Ekans and the Arbok, and then fly reset back to the front of the lab without aggravating them, and then start spamming A on the warp point again to go to the back of the lab and then back to the front to re-roll these Houndour, Houndoom, and Noivern spawns. It sounds like something that wouldn't work, but this Noivern and this Houndoom you'll see a lot as a shiny if you continue to shiny hunt for something like Honedge or Ekans. The same also applies to this Noivern, which can be found in the middle of the lab here near the room where we knocked out the Houndoom earlier. Now with Electrike and Manectric, this is slightly more tricky, but the concept is the same. The most obvious choice you'd think upon entering the lab is to turn to the room on the right and then use the first warp point near the Houndoom to travel to this little room where you can see the Electrike and Manectric spawns, and then spam A to go back and forth between these 2 warp points. While this will re-roll the Houndoom each time, the Electrike and Manectric are however too near to this far warp point, and you'll even be able to hear them still spawned in from this warp point when you return. Now to fix this and hunt these Pokemon using this specific warp point, you can run roughly up to this black tile near the Houndoom, which will be far enough to despawn the Electrike and Manectric. However, obviously this is slightly slower than simply just spamming A on the warp point. But thankfully there is an alternative to hunt Electrike and Manectric in the lab. So what you want to do is start fresh in the lab and take the first warp point to the back again near the Honedge, and then run all the way back down this corridor again, run past the Houndoom this time, and then through into the Ekans and Arbok room, but take the immediate first left and then enter this warp point here. Now I do actually highly recommend knocking out the Ekans and Arbok and Houndoom spawns before taking the warp point, as their Pokemon cries can actually get in the way of hearing Electrike and Manectric spawn in. I also recommend having the Pokemon cries as the only sound effect turned on in the settings. Now from this warp point near the Ekans room, enter it and then run and take the immediate first warp point in front of you to be taken to the room closest to the Electrike and Manectric. Now if you start spamming A back and forth between these 2 warp points, you'll only hear the Manectric spawn in each time and not the Electrike. And if you run to this next nearby room and zoom in and look into where Electrike should be, you can see that it actually hasn't spawned in yet. So like with the Ekans hunt, what you need to do first is to run up closer to the Electrike to spawn it in. Again, try not to aggravate the Electrike or the Manectric. Now like Ekans and Arbok, to keep these spawns active, you now need to fly reset to the front of the lab again. Now from here, take this warp point again to the back back of the lab, run past the Honedge again down the corridor here, follow the grey path into the Ekans room, turn left and head to the warp point, and then take the final warp point to enter the room closest to the Electrike and Manectric spawns. Now this time as you warp in, you will now hear both Manectric and Electrike spawn in each time you enter the room. Occasionally you will hear one or both of them turn into an alpha at a 5% chance, which is a good indicator that they are being re-rolled each time. Now if you do become curious and want to check if you've spawned in a shiny, you can run closer to check the spawns visually on the screen here. However, by doing this, if you do run back to the warp point and start spamming A again, you'll notice that Electrike has stopped spawning in. So if you do run up and check to see if you got a shiny and you want to keep that Electrike spawned in, you do have to fly reset back to the front of the lab and repeat the steps to get back to the warp point and start re-rolling again. Tedious, but at least it works. Next, we have Honedge and Doublade. Now, if you freshly enter the lab and take the warp point to the back room, when you get there, you'll technically be within the 50-meter range of the single Doublade spawn and the two Honedge spawns. However, only the Doublade will be initially spawned in, which is something you can audibly hear. This means at this point, if you spam A to warp back and forth between the 2 points from the front lab and the back of the lab, you'll only be re-rolling the Doublade, not the Honedge. So to fix this, when you're in the back of the lab, run up into this little doorway here, where you'll then notice the Honedge actually spawn in, and then similar to Ekans and Arbok or Electrike and Manectric, do a fly reset without being seen, which will take you back to the front of the lab to properly activate this exploit. Now, if you enter the warp point to the back of the lab, you will still hear the Doublade, but you'll also now hear the two Honedge, and occasionally see one of them float right past you from the warp point. All you need to do now, continue spamming A on the warp point here and re-roll for those shinies. But do note, like with the Electrike, if you do run into the small doorway to check the spawns to visually see if there are any shinies, if you do manually just run back to the warp point and start spamming A again, this will despawn the Honedge and leave you with just the Doublade being re-rolled. So like with Electrike, if you do go up and check to see if any of the Honedge are shiny and you want to continue hunting, then once you've checked them, fly reset to the front of the lab again to keep the exploit active and the Honedge spawned in. Now, while the Doublade as well as the Honedge spawn on the left only have a 5% chance to spawn in as an alpha, like every other Pokemon we've covered here so far, the Honedge spawn on the right, the one you can see from the warp point, actually has a whopping 20% chance. So if you're ever going to find a SHALPHA Honedge, this spot right here might just be the best option in the base game or even the DLC. And if you really want to be efficient, you can combine the Honedge hunt with the Ekans hunt. Simply first set up the Ekans hunt by going near the Ekans in the middle, but don't aggravate them, and then fly reset back to the lab, and then from the front warp to the back of the lab again, and then run into this little room just before the Honedge to spawn them in, and then fly reset once more. Now all you do, jump back onto the warp point and then spam away. Every time you warp to the front of the lab, you'll get new Ekans and Arbok spawns, and every time you warp to the back, you'll get new Honedge and Blade spawns. Do a bit of resetting over a short amount of time, and you'll start seeing shiny Pokemon spawn in, sometimes 2, or sometimes even 3. Another guaranteed SHALPHA Pokemon down easily. Amazing. Now finally in the lab we have Beldum and Metang, which can be found in the furthest most room on the left. Now one of the spawns here, which is usually the closest one to the doorway, is a guaranteed Beldum spawn, while the other spawn has a 50-50 split between Beldum and its first evolution Metang. Now while the set Beldum spawn and the 50% Metang have a 5% alpha chance, the 50% Beldum spawn has a 10% alpha chance. Not as high as the 20% alpha chance for the Honedge, but it is still higher than most other Pokemon spawns in the whole game. Now to hunt these Pokemon, you will have to do the same setup like you did with Honedge, Electrike, Ekans, etc. So step 1, freshly enter the lab and then turn left, and then follow the corridors around past the room where the Houndour and Houndoom spawn, and then turn left into this small corridor just before the Beldum room. Now from here, this will spawn in the 2 Pokemon, but like before, you do not want to aggravate them as this can ruin the exploit. So once these 2 Pokemon are spawned in, do your important fly reset back to the lab entrance to activate this exploit, and then make your way from the front of the lab into the right corridor, and then run up to this first warp point here near the Houndoom, which will teleport you back to the other side where you can see the Electrike and Manectric, but more importantly, next to the room where the Beldum spawn. Now if you did everything correctly, you'll now be free to spam A to warp between the 2 areas, which should re-roll for new Beldum spawns each time. Now if you have any doubt, try listening out for the Beldum cries near the warp point. You should be able to hear them in your right ear if you're wearing headphones correctly. Although you might also hear the Electrike and Manectric spawns, as well as the Ekans and the Arbok spawns, which are also nearby, so knock them out first if you feel that would help you. But trust in the process and spam A for as long as you think is necessary, and then when you're ready to check the spawns, run from the far warp point across the lab to the Beldum room, and hopefully you find a shiny. If you don't find a shiny, then again, careful not to aggravate the Beldum, and then simply fly reset back to the lab's entrance to keep the exploit active, and then run back to the warp point on the right of the lab's entrance and then try again. But if you're lucky, you will find a shiny. I definitely recommend saving though, as the catch rate on the Beldum is horrendous and you could fail to catch it if you're not careful. Also note for you SHALPHA hunters, Alpha, Metagross, Aegislash, and Noivern also have a chance of spawning in under the Prism Tower in Wild Zone 20. So that's it for Lysandre Lab, which can be terrible to shiny hunt in if you don't know the mechanics, but if you follow the methods shown in this section correctly, then you should have no problems at all. Now next, briefly, is fossil hunting in the Pokemon Research Lab. These include Aerodactyl with the old Amber, Tyrant with a Jaw fossil, or Amura with a Sail fossil. Now if you have the DLC, I definitely recommend steering clear of the Pokemon Research Lab and hunt the fossils instead in a Hyperspace Wild Zone if you can find them, as you'll be able to manipulate both the shiny odds and alpha odds. Whereas in the Research Lab, you'll have a full 1 in 4,096 chance of finding a shiny and a 1 in 100 chance of finding an alpha. Meaning if you want a SHALPHA from the lab specifically, that's a 1 in 409,600 chance. And if you're wanting a female specifically, which for all of these Pokemon only has a 12% chance of being generated, you're looking at a whopping 1 in 3,413,333 chance. But if you still want to use the lab to hunt for the fossils over the DLC, I recommend buying about 10 to 15 of a fossil and then revive them all at once over a couple of minutes and then check the Pokemon in your box. If you don't find what you're looking for, then close the game without saving and then load back in and try again. Now when you do revive a fossil, you'll notice it on the screen in the middle when you register it. Now using this screen as an indicator, you'll know pretty quick if you got a shiny, as the icons will be different, and you can also easily see if you revived an alpha due to the level of alpha fossils being level 35, while non-alphas are level 20. So again, do the lab if you want, but if you have the DLC, save yourself the time and hunt the fossils in a Hyperspace Wild Zone. Next, we have the Lumiose City Overworld, or to be more clear, the areas of Lumiose City not located within a Wild Zone. Now, while hunting most Pokemon in Hyperspace Wild Zones in the DLC is faster, again, hunting here is for people who prefer not to grind and hunt in Hyperspace Wild Zones, or simply for those who don't have the DLC. Now, I said it at the start of the video, but I'll say it again. Most Pokemon spawns that you'll see across the Lumiose City Overworld are alpha locked, although it is possible for them to appear as a shiny. Now, in this section of the video, I'll be going through 2 separate pools of Pokemon and the best and fastest way to shiny, alpha, or SHALPHA hunt them. As this video is getting a bit long, I have shortened this section down to just focus on the very fastest spawns to hunt, rather than going through each and every location that Pokemon can spawn in. The first pool will be all of these Pokemon here, which again are the only wild Pokemon spawns across the Lumiose City Overworld that do have a chance of spawning in as an alpha. And the second pool will be the locations of all the set spawn alphas across Lumiose City, while also mentioning the best places across Lumiose City to hunt their non-alpha forms. I'll also throw in the best for Bebe and Eevee locations in here as well as an exception. So if you've skipped ahead to this part of the video and are looking for a Pokemon that aren't on either of these lists, chances are I would have already covered them and the best way to hunt them elsewhere in this video. But with that, let's start with Lumiose City Overworld Pokemon that have a chance of being alpha, starting with Dedenne. Now, Dedenne has about 15 spawn areas across Lumiose City, and it shares these spawns with usually Fletchling, Bunnelby, Patrat, or Emolga, depending on the location. In some cases, the Dedenne will have a 50% chance of appearing over one of these Pokemon, depending on the location, while other locations, the Dedenne will be rarer. There's also one location where it spawns 2/3 of the time over a Bunnelby. While most Dedenne spawns have a 20% chance to appear as an alpha, there are a couple of spawns which are alpha locked. These include this location on the edge of the map here in Magenta Sector 8, where it's eating some fruit. 70% of the time, this will be a Dedenne, while 30% of the time it can appear as an Emolga. And the other location for the alpha locked Dedenne is this one on the roof in Magenta Sector 6, near the outdoor dining area. This Dedenne shares a spawn with Fletchling. There's also technically this location just near Hotel Z, where a bunch of alpha locked Pokemon can spawn, with alpha locked Dedenne spawning just over 5% of the time. Now, out of all the possible Dedenne spawns in the Lumiose City Overworld, here are the top 4 from testing, which are the fastest to reroll for. The first I want to show you is one of my favorites that takes advantage of the 10-meter vertical spawn limit of Pokemon. First, fly to this cafe outside of Wild Zone 9 here, and then make your way across the road to this Holovator in Blue Sector 4. Once you're here, save your game while standing on top of the Holovator. All you need to do now is press A to shoot yourself to the roof and check for the Dedenne spawn, which has a 50% chance of spawning somewhere up here. Otherwise, the spawn will be Fletchling. While you do this, you can even dual hunt the Absol up here too, which can appear on one of these 3 roofs. Didn't find a shiny Alpha or SHALPHA, then just close your game, load back in, and repeat the process. The next time you load back in and travel back up the elevator, you'll have different spawns. Repeat until you get what you want. Now, if you prefer the runaway despawning method, then try it on this spawn on the roof north of Wild Zone 4, which you can get to if you climb up all of this scaffolding in the center of this building in Rouge Sector 8, and then jump on over to this roof and make your way west. Now, once you're here, you'll either see a Bunnelby or Dedenne, which each have a 50% chance of spawning. Continue on this left gutter here until you get to the bushes at the end, and then turn around. Now, you can run back and forth on this part of the roof to get within 50 meters of the Dedenne or the Bunnelby spawn to spawn it back in, and then run back 70 meters towards the bush to despawn the Pokemon. The Bunnelby can't be Alpha, but the Dedenne has a 20% chance. In my experience, it's definitely the straightest path in the overworld to Alpha or SHALPHA hunt Dedenne. The third place I want to show you is on this roof in Magenta Sector 4, where you'll find a Dedenne or a fletchling at a 50-50 rate. It's very flat here on the roof, so you can see the Dedenne easy, even if it spawns in behind a bush here, and of course it's faster than soft resetting. Give it a try and see if this location works better for you. The fourth and final ideal place to hunt Dedenne in the overworld is on this roof in Jean Sector 11. This Dedenne spawns in 2/3 of the time over Bunnelby, and can be easily re-rolled for by heading across the rooftops to roughly this area here, and then running back to see the new spawn. Noting it can sometimes spawn behind a chimney, which can slow you down. So give this one a try if you want, and make a decision to see if this works best for you. Also, don't forget that Dedenne has a chance to spawn in as an Alpha in Wild Zone 20 as well. The next Pokemon you can Alpha or SHALPHA hunt in the Lumiose City overworld is Ralts. Now, there are 4 Ralts locations to choose from, all with a 20% Alpha chance, but I'll narrow it down to the 2 fastest and best ones. The first location is from this rooftop in Vert Sector 4, which you can get to very easily by using this elevator near the Pokemon Center. If you make your way to this red roof and look down, you'll see a single 100% Ralt spawn. From here, you can turn around and run down this roof slope towards the end of the green roof here, and then turn and run back. You'll get a new spawn each time, and have a great vantage point to see the new Ralt spawn in very quickly. Rinse and repeat until you find what you're looking for. Now, the other great location for Ralts where you can find 2 100% spawns is in this courtyard in Magenta Sector 7. Now, you can either run away despawn these Ralts here by running towards the canal to roughly this yellow post box here, and then head on back to the building in the courtyard to check your new spawns and hope for a shiny or a SHALPHA. You can also climb this ladder here by the left Ralts, and then circle on around clockwise to near the right Ralts where there's a bench you can reset from. This bench will also re-roll the nearby possible Dedenne spawn. While it is a little tricky to see down below, it is another option for those who prefer the bench over the runaway despawning. Again, give it a try and see which method works best for you. Also, don't forget that Garbodor has a chance to spawn in Wild Zone 20 around the Prism Tower, and can also appear as an Alpha spawn under it along with Gallade. The next Pokemon you can Alpha or SHALPHA hunt in the Lumiose City overworld is Riolu. Now, there are 4 Riolu locations to choose from, all with a 20% Alpha chance, but I'm going to save you the time and show you just the one spawn which is best. Now, by far, the best Riolu spawn in the Lumiose City overworld is on the roof here in Rouge Sector 4 in this corner here. Now, like Heliotire or Eevee, Riolu only spawns in the day and only during sunny weather. So if you don't see Riolu here, that is why. Bench reset and re-roll for better weather. Now, you can get to this roof easily enough by flying to Wild Zone 3, taking the Holovator on your left up, and then head right to where the Budu and Vivian spawns are, and then jump across onto the Riolu roof. Now, the best way to hunt this Riolu is by runaway despawning it, by running along this roof until you reach the first table just after the wooden floor area. When you run back, you'll have a chance to spawn in a shiny Alpha or a SHALPHA. Now, if you do see it, I'd recommend knocking out this Pidgeot here, as it can get annoying, but it will respawn every 5 minutes. Keep running back and forth, and eventually, hopefully, you find a shiny or a SHALPHA. This is also a great place to dual hunt the several non-Alpha Spritzee that spawn here as well, so keep an eye out for them too. Also, don't forget that Lucario has a chance to spawn in Wild Zone 20 around Prism Tower, and can also appear as an Alpha underneath it as well. The next Pokemon you can Alpha or SHALPHA hunt in the Lumiose City overworld is Dratini, and by extension, Dragonair. There are 6 locations to choose from, of which 5 of these locations Dratini shares its spawn with Dragonair. However, Dragonair only has a 5% chance of spawning in. Now, out of these 6 locations, I'll just cover the 3 that I've had the fastest time hunting, but I'd love to hear if you prefer other locations. So the first and least amount of effort is this one on the roof here above Restaurant Lunar in Vert Sector 6. Now, while the Dratini or Dragonair is indeed above us on the roof, upon fly resetting, it isn't actually spawned in yet, due to us not being within 10 meters vertically of it. So if you were to spam fly resets to Restaurant Lanar, it won't work, and you won't be respawning in any new Dratini. So instead, what you want to do, turn around and climb this ladder here, and as you climb the ladder, turn your camera back around to see the Dratini or the Dragonair spawn in. If you don't find a shiny or SHALPHA on the ladder, then simply fly reset to Restaurant Lanar and repeat the process. Do note though that by doing this method and climbing the ladder every so often, you are also spawning in other surrounding roof Pokemon as well, so check your surrounding roofs every once in a while, as some other shinies might have spawned in. Now the second most ideal Dratini spawn to hunt is this spawn over the cafe in Blue Sector 9. To get there, fly to the cafe here and then take the nearby Holovator up onto the roof. Turn left after getting off the Holovator and then climb this roof, and then run over this little bridge here to this section of the roof where there are some Budu spawns. Get close enough to the edge and you'll see a Dratini or Dragonair spawn in across the courtyard above the arch window. Now to despawn these, simply run back over the little bridge and then run back again and head to the edge of the building again to respawn. It's a very easy method to spawn in many Dratini very quickly, just try not to fall down as it can be tedious getting back up. If you do see a shiny or SHALPHA, then climb down to the wooden roof on your right and make your way over to the other side to catch it. But obviously don't forget to save, as the Dratini can flee if you're not careful. The third and perhaps the fastest and easiest in the game is this Dratini spawn on this roof in Jean Sector 3. To get up here, fly to Restaurant Luau, make your way across the street and up these stairs, and then turn right, and then climb this scaffolding to get up onto the roof. Once up here, simply run to this corner of the roof to despawn the Dratini on the adjacent roof, and then run closer to this side of the roof you're on to respawn it. You won't have any danger of accidentally falling off here thanks to the railing, and you'll have a great vantage point too to see the spawn due to being higher up. If you find what you're looking for, then simply jump over across. You can also dual hunt this Alpha Flabebe here, however that does require at times having to jump off the far corner of this roof here to despawn it, so keep that in mind. Again, there are other Dratini that you can hunt in the overworld, including this one here that is solely a Dratini spawn that you can only hunt on a sunny day. So again, I'd love to hear what your favorite method to hunt Dratini is. And also, don't forget that Dragonite has a chance to spawn in as an alpha in Wile Zone 20 as well. Next up is Goomy and Sliggoo, which can only be found in the Lumiose City overworld when it's raining. There are 21 locations that Goomy and Sliggoo can spawn in across the Lumiose City overworld, but to save time, here is the absolute best one that will net you a shiny or SHALPHA in no time at all. Simply fly to the Canal sewers entrance near Wile Zone 14 when it's raining, where you'll see 2 spawns of Goomy that have a 20% chance of being alpha, or if you're lucky, a Sliggoo, which appears 5% of the time. From here, enter the doors and climb down into the sewers, and once in, turn immediately back around and exit. Congratulations, that's the strategy. Simply continuously enter and exit between the sewers and the Lumiose City overworld. This is much faster and more efficient than fly resetting, and you'll be re-rolling the 2 spawns every few seconds. Now this spot has been extremely lucky for me personally, having found both a shiny Sliggoo from the left spawn here, as well as a shiny Alpha Goomy on the pontoon out the front here. Oh my god! Both instances are a 1 in 20,480 chance of happening. Give it a try and happy hunting. Also, don't forget that Goodra has a chance to spawn in as an alpha in Wile Zone 20 as well. The next Pokemon you can alpha or SHALPHA hunt in the Lumiose City overworld is Hawlucha, where there are 12 locations to choose from. All of these Hawlucha have a 20% alpha chance and mostly share spawns with Pidgey or sometimes Fletchling. Now, of the 12 Hawlucha spawn locations, only 5 have a 50-50 spawn chance between the Hawlucha and the other Pokemon, while 7 Hawlucha have a measly 10% chance of spawning in. So out of these 5 luckier locations, here are the 2 that I found to be the fastest. The first and my most favorite spot, as I mentioned earlier in the video, is on the roof just outside the top gate of Wile Zone 15. To get there, fly to this cafe here and take the nearby Holovator up and head to the right and look over at this rooftop on your left. Drop a pin roughly on this location here and then run back and forth to respawn in either a Pidgey or Hawlucha. You have a great vantage point from this roof and have to run very minimally to see your next spawn. Just note though that they sometimes are hiding behind the chimney. Keep running and hopefully you find a shiny. The other fastest location for Hawlucha is on this roof here between Restaurant Lier and the rooftop where you can find a Riolu spawn. To get there, fly to Wile Zone 3 and make your way left to the Holovator, and then once you're there, take the Holovator up and head left on the roof towards where there's an Emolga spawn. Now from here, you can essentially run back and forth between these 2 roof corners here on the red roof to despawn respawn the Pidgey or Hawlucha, and then respawn another one. Sometimes you may have to slightly walk along the spiderweb here to see the new spawn, so be careful not to fall down. If you find a shiny alpha or SHALPHA you're looking for, then make your way over the web and follow the roof around to the Pokemon. It's a very simple hunt, so I'd love to hear how you go with this one. Also, don't forget that Hawlucha has a chance to spawn in as an alpha in Wild Zone 20 as well. The second to last Pokemon you can alpha or SHALPHA hunt in the Lumiose City overworld is Larvitar, where it can appear in 5 locations at a 20% alpha chance. Now, while it is also huntable in Wild Zone 15, where there are 2 to 3 Larvitars that can spawn in at once, these Wild Zone Larvitars only have a 5% alpha chance. So technically, if you wanted a SHALPHA Larvitar, then going for a single one in the overworld at a 20% alpha chance will be faster. Now again, to save time, while 4 of the other Larvitar spawns have their charm, none are as fast or as efficient as the one on the rooftop here in Rouge Sector 7 near Wild Zone 13. To get on the roof, make your way to this ladder here, located just near these battle courts on the map. Now while you're up here, this is where you can hunt for the set spawn alpha Spritzee, the set spawn alpha Pansage, Panpour, or Pansear further along, with also the non-alpha spawns, the Pokemon down below in Wild Zone 13 itself, and of course this single Larvitar over here. Now when you run along this roof and spawn in the Larvitar, you can either turn back around and run 70 meters to despawn it and then run back and check your new spawn, or you can continue to run around counterclockwise in a big circle on the roof to check all the other spawns as well. If you do choose to run in a big circle, this is more efficient in finding a shiny or a SHALPHA in general, but if you're just after Larvitar, then running back and forth rather than in a circle will be faster, so plan your hunt accordingly. Also, don't forget that Tyranitar has a chance to spawn in as an alpha in Wild Zone 20 as well. The final Pokemon you can alpha or SHALPHA hunt in the Lumiose City overworld is Absol, of which there are 4 locations to choose from, all at a 20% alpha chance. 2 of these locations are terrible, so I won't even cover them, but the easiest and perhaps my favorite is this one here that I mentioned earlier in the Dedenne section. Again, what you want to do is fly to this cafe here outside Wild Zone 9, make your way across the street to this nearby elevator, and then save while you're standing on top of it. Upon traveling up, you'll either see Absol on top of the roof here in front of you, or on your right, or on top of the roof down below. Also up here in front of you and on your left is where you can find the 50% chance Dedenne spawn, so it's a good dual hunt. If you didn't find a shiny alpha or SHALPHA that you're after, then simply close the game, reload, and instantly travel up the elevator again to check your new spawns. Again, this is taking advantage of the 10-meter vertical spawn distance limit of Pokemon. Now, the other easy Absol can be found on the rooftop here around Jean Sector 11. To hunt it, fly to this Pokemon Center here and use the elevator across the road to get up to the top of the roof. Run across the rooftops until you can see the Absol on this roof across the road, and to despawn it, run back along the roof you're on until you reach the edge or just before the beam, which is just over 70 meters away from the spawn. You can then run back towards the other end of the roof within 50 meters of the Absol to respawn it in, noting it may sometimes appear behind the chimney. If you do spawn in a shiny, then you can get to it by first climbing up the ladder in this alley behind the Pokemon Center here, and then making your way across the rooftops towards the spawn. It's a very easy shiny to notice, so good luck. Also, don't forget that Absol has a chance to spawn in as an alpha in Wild Zone 20 as well. And that's it for all the wild Pokemon spawns across the Lumiose City overworld that have a chance of spawning in as an alpha. The second and final pool of Lumiose City overworld spawns are the set spawn alpha Pokemon, as well as the alternative spots you can find their non-alphas. Now, starting with the 3 elemental monkeys, there are actually 2 set spots that they can spawn in as an alpha. The first is on this roof in Blue Sector 6. You can use the runaway method from this higher rooftop near it to quickly re-roll the spawn. It's a great vantage point, so it's definitely worth a try. The other spot though, as I've mentioned a few times in this video, is on this rooftop here near Rouge Sector 7, which you can re-roll for by runaway despawning from this roof here. Again, to get up here, climb this ladder by the battle courts near Wild Zone 13. Running back and forth along this side of the roof is quickest. However, if you want to be efficient and maximize your chances of finding a shiny or a SHALPHA around you, then run in a big continuous counterclockwise loop around this roof to re-roll for the Larvitar, the set spawn alpha Spritzee, and the spawns in the Wild Zone down below as well. This rooftop also re-rolls several non-alpha elemental monkey spawns as well, making this statistically the best place in the overworld to hunt for them also. Elsewhere in the overworld, you'll find 3 of these monkeys in trees in this courtyard in Jean Sector 4. You can use the runaway method to despawn the monkeys from this location here, although it can be hard at times to actually see the monkeys spawned in the trees. Sadly though, only one of these 3 spawns are close enough to be re-rolled by spamming fly resets at the nearby Pokemon Center. There are also 2 monkey spawns on top of this roof here in Blue Sector 7, which you can get up to by entering through the archway near the fountain and taking the ladder on your right up. Again, you can do some runaway despawning while you're up here. Just note though that you'll be climbing this central roof every time. So those are the best multi-locations. You'll find non-alpha spawns of the elemental monkeys. There are of course many other singular locations of them scattered around Lumiose City, including this shiny Pansage here that I found while getting footage for this section. So if there are any locations you've found that work great for you, then feel free to share them in the comments below. Also, don't forget that Simisage, Pansear, and Panpour all have a chance to spawn in as an alpha in Wild Zone 20 as well. Now, as just mentioned, Alpha Spritzee can be found on the roof near Wild Zone 13, which you can reroll for by running in a continuous loop on the rooftops. It takes around 21 seconds to do a full continuous loop of this rooftop, so keep going and eventually you'll find a SHALPHA. Now, if you're looking for the best non-alpha Spritzee spawns to shiny hunt in the overworld, then you'll find 3 spawns on this rooftop in Rouge Sector 4, where you can also hunt Riolu. Either run in a big loop along this rooftop to despawn the further Spritzee and re-roll the new ones, etc., or choose just one and run back and forth to despawn and respawn it much more quickly. In terms of Spritzee's counterpart Swirlix, the set alpha spawn can be found near Wild Zone 7 on top of the building near Cafe Truck number 3. Simply continuously fly reset to the cafe again and again, which is close enough to re-roll for a SHALPHA Swirlix each time. Also, keep an eye out for this set non-alpha Swirlix on this roof here, just behind the cafe truck, which is vertically low enough to re-roll for this spawn each fly resets. If you're looking instead for the best place in general in the overworld to shiny hunt non-alpha Swirlix spawns, then simply fly to this location in Blue Sector 8, take the nearby elevator up, make your way around the roof to the right, and then climb this ladder until you're on the part of the roof here, just below near where Hawlucha or Pidgey can spawn above you to your right. From up here, you'll notice that there are 5 Swirlix spawns down below. Simply make your way down to one of these benches at the bottom here and start doing bench resets. Assuming you have the shiny charm, your odds of finding a shiny among the 5 spawns are 1 out of every 205 bench resets. Again, they can't be alpha, but it shouldn't take you too long to find a shiny. Finally, a quick alternative dual shiny hunt for both Spritzee and Swirlix is to continuously fly to this cafe truck near Wild Zone 12, where you'll notice either Pokemon spawn on top. It's a 50-50 spawn for either, but it's a low effort hunt that can be easily re-rolled for. Sadly, the 2 trade evolutions of these Pokemon can't be found as alphas in Wild Zone 20, but for those with a DLC, they can be hunted in Hyperspace Wild Zones. The set spawn Alpha Kakuna can be found in this little area near one of the bottom entrances to Wild Zone 18. The benches at the top of the Wild Zone can be used to reset for most spawns in the area, including the Alpha Kakuna and Weedle here, so if you're doing a Fennekin hunt as outlined in the Wild Zone 18 section of this video, definitely check your spawns down below every now and then as well. And as touched on previously, if you're looking for a non-Alpha Kakuna to shiny hunt, then there's this tree here just north of Wild Zone 1, which has 5 of them. Either reset for them using the bench here by the Holovator, or do some runaway despawning along Vernal Avenue and then check the spawns, or fly reset to the Pokemon Research Lab and run back to the Holovator and check the spawns and repeat. A fun hunt with multiple methods. The set spawn Alpha Patrat I've covered several times in this video, which can be found near Wild Zone 2. Simply fly to Cafe Cyclone, and from here you can quickly run around the side of the building while taking note of the set spawn Alpha in Wild Zone 2 down below, and then head through this archway here. You'll find a guaranteed Alpha Patrat and 2 regular spawns. Rinse and repeat until you find a shiny. There's also a nearby bench within range on the map here. You can do some bench resets for alternatively. Next are the set spawn Alpha Trubbish and Alpha Garbodor. With Alpha Trubbish, it can be found here on the map and is within 50 meters of the Wild Zone 2 fly point. So by fly resetting continuously to Wild Zone 2, you'll be re-rolling for a new Alpha Trubbish every time. To check the spawn, you can easily fly to Hotel Z, head right and climb the ladder behind it. Once at the top, drop down and run over the little bridge here, and then float from this ledge over to see the Alpha Trubbish. If it's shiny, drop down and go catch it. There are also some benches down here you can use to reset for it, but they're nowhere near as fast as fly resetting. For the set spawn Alpha Garbodor, it can be found on the map here in this alley near Wild Zone 8, along with 2 other Trubbish spawns. Now the Garbodor itself and one of the Trubbish spawns are both within range of the Wild Zone 8 fly point. So by fly resetting continuously to Wild Zone 8, you'll be re-rolling for a new Trubbish and Alpha Garbodor every time. You can then easily check the spawns by running behind you at the Wild Zone 8 entrance, taking the first left and then turn left again down the alley near Wild Zone 19. You never know when a SHALPHA may pop up. And again, for the bench resetters among you, there are some just located on the other side of one of the walls as the Garbodor, so repeatedly spamming resets on the benches here will re-roll the Alpha Garbodor as well as both Trubbish spawns. Also, don't forget that Garbodor has a chance to spawn in as an alpha in Wild Zone 20 as well. The set spawn Alpha Pidgeot can be found on this rooftop here in Gible Jean Sector 4. To get there, fly to this Pokemon Center here and head to the Holovator just around the corner and travel up. The fastest way to hunt this alpha is to simply do some runaway despawning for it on this flat roof and run back and forth to re-roll for a shiny. Again, benches down below, in this case this one here, won't benefit rooftop spawns as the Pokemon itself does not load in if it's more than 10 meters above you, so keep that in mind. And also don't forget you can alternatively hunt SHALPHA Pidgey in Wild Zone 1. The final set spawn alpha Pokemon in the entire game is Alpha Flabebe, and in this case there are two spawns close to each other on the rooftops of these buildings here, either side of Jean Street. Firstly, yellow, orange, or alpha blue Flabebe have a 33.33% split chance to spawn in on the north rooftop. The easiest way to hunt these is to fly to Restaurant Luau, run up the stairs opposite it across the road, turn right, and then climb up the scaffolding to get up on top of the roof. This is the same roof I covered in the Dratini section of this video, which allows you to dual hunt both Dratini and Flabebe. Now, the alpha Flabebe across the roof here can spawn in a number of similar locations on this roof, and almost all of them can be despawned using the exact same corner as Dratini, which again you can do by running to this far corner on the roof you're on here, and then run back to this side to generate new spawns. However, if a Flabebe spawns next to this front planter box here, it will be too near to despawn using the usual far corner on your roof. Thankfully though, by running off the corner of the roof over the railing while spamming A and floating back up all in one precise movement, you'll be able to despawn this alpha Flabebe and spawn in a new one and continue your hunts. Of course, figuring out if you've actually found a shiny yellow, orange, or blue alpha Flabebe is hard from this distance, so you've got to keep your eyes peeled. Turn on the zoom in the Switch system settings too, if that helps you. If you do find a shiny, then jump across from the corner of the roof here to catch it. Now, the other alpha Flabebe spawn can be found nearby here on the roof south of Jean Street, and this one will either give you the red or white flower form. From testing, the fastest ways to re-roll for this flower is to flower reset to the Justice Dojo, and then make your way up the ladder here to check the spawn each time, and then rinse and repeat. You can also take this Holovator in Jean Sector 6 up onto the roof, climb the next ladder where there are regular Flabebe spawns, and then look down on the roof below to see the alpha spawn. If you want to reset for another, then roll back down where the ladder was to roughly this point here to despawn it, and then climb back up and respawn another one and repeat. This method is faster than fly resetting if you're doing it optimally, so it's up to you how you want to hunt. You can also re-roll for this alpha Flabebe from the roof Dratini and the north alpha Flabebe spawned on. However, it does involve dropping down onto the edge of the roof here, as this is the only place just far enough away up here to despawn the red or white alpha Flabebe. You'll have to do some pretty precise moving if you're going to hunt the south spawn from up here, so be careful not to fall down. This now brings us to the non-alpha Flabebe spawns. Now, while Flabebe can spawn in many locations across Lumiose City, including the red flowers in Wild Zone 3, I want to cover here some of the easiest locations for every form. Since we're already here, this roof above the dojo, you'll find a blue, orange, and white form Flabebe, and also a red flower Floette. The easiest way to hunt these four spawns is to save at the base of the Holovator before initially traveling up. Once saved, travel up the Holovator and then up the ladder again in front of you to check the spawns for a shiny. If you don't find what you're looking for, then close the game, reload, and repeat. Each subsequent time you travel up the Holovator and ladder again, you'll find new spawns. Again, this is taking advantage of the 10-meter vertical spawn distance limit of Pokemon. It is slower to do on the Switch one due to the slower load times, so rolling off the roof and runaway despawning might be a better options for players there. Elsewhere in the city, you can easily reset for some yellow and red flower Flabebe at the main cafe in the Vert District. Fly there, check the 2 yellow spawns and 1 red, and then rinse and repeat. Another quick hunt is by flying to this Pokemon Center here on South Boulevard, and then run up Blue Street to check the single orange spawn. Fly reset and repeat until you find a shiny. One final multi-hunt is on these 2 roofs on Vernal Avenue, where you can hunt 1 blue and 2 white Flabebes. You can run all the way over to this frozen section to despawn all 3 Pokemon, and then run back within 50 meters to respawn all of them. With only 1 roof to climb in the middle here, it's not that bad, and it should net you a shiny very quickly. Now, there are so many other Flabebe spawns across the city, so let me know if you have any other great locations that you prefer. Also, don't forget that red flower Florges has a chance to spawn in as an alpha in Wild Zone 20 as well. And to finish the Lumiose City Overworld section off, I just want to touch on Eevee. Now, excluding Wild Zone 19, there are 7 locations Eevee can spawn in across the city, noting they only spawn in the day and when it's sunny, and none of them can be alpha. I still recommend fly resetting at the entrance to Wild Zone 19 to quickly and easily reroll for a potential shiny alpha or SHALPHA Eevee, but if you're adamant about finding one elsewhere in the overworld, then here are the 3 fastest ones you can shiny hunt from these 7 locations. Firstly, you can find an Eevee here on the grass in Vert Sector 9. There are no nearby fly points here, so you do have to do some runaway despawning, but it isn't too painful as you have a great vantage point from the top of the stairs. There are also some benches you can reset on if you prefer. Perhaps the easiest overworld EV to shiny hunt is on this rooftop in Magenta Sector 7. You can do some runaway despawning for it on this roof across from it, which you can get up to by taking the nearby Holovator. This roof also has a great vantage point to see the EV, so it's definitely worth giving the hunt a try from here. Again, there's also a bench here that's within range of the EV if you prefer the bench reset method. And the final overworld EV spawn I recommend can be found on this rooftop here in Jaune Sector 7. If you're already up here doing some runaway despawning for the 50% Hawlucha spawn, then it's also worth checking the EV spawn every once in a while, as well as the Larvitar spawns, as you never know what might shine first. Again, these are the fastest 3 EV to shiny hunt that I found through testing, but let me know if you prefer any other ones. To conclude, if you want every evolution as an alpha or a SHALPHA, remember all evolutions have a chance to spawn in the center of Wile Zone 20 except for Espeon and Umbreon and Eevee itself. Good luck to anyone shiny alpha hunting Eevee in the base game, not using the DLC. You're gonna need it. And that's it for the Lumiose City overworld, as well as the entire Pokemon Legends ZA base game. I hope after 2 hours and 38 minutes that you've found something useful so far in this video. But we're not done yet, as in this final section, we'll be covering the Mega Dimension DLC, why it's worth your time and money, and how you can hunt and find SHALPHA Pokemon extremely easily. Now, to reiterate, every hunt I've covered so far in this video is still fastest for those who didn't or don't want to purchase the DLC, or those with the DLC but don't want to hunt in Hyperspace Wild Zones. Whether that be because they don't want to do the continuous grind to farm rare donut ingredients that then only give you a very limited time to shiny hunt what you're looking for, or due to the heightened motion sickness and vertigo some have reported experiencing while in Hyperspace Wild Zones. But in all honesty, if you're looking to shiny alpha hunt as many Pokemon as possible, then the DLC is definitely worth it. Now, story aside, the premise for the DLC is very simple. Make donuts in Hotel Z that will then allow you to enter Hyperspace Wild Zones, and then grind the tasks within the zones to build up a stash of Hyper Berries that will then allow you to make better donuts with special buffs to then enter more types of Hyperspace Wild Zones where you'll have a better chance of finding shinies or alphas, and then repeat this process in a never-ending cycle. See why some people prefer the simpler hunts in the base game? Now, this DLC section will cover 2 topics. The first is donut making and what Sparkling Power and Alpha Power can do for your hunting odds, and the second will showcase the actual methods to shiny or SHALPHA hunt in Hyperspace Wild Zones. So before we get into hunting, let's cover donut making. Now, at the start of the DLC, you can make donuts using up to 3 berries, but by the end of it, you can use up to 8. For simplicity, this video will assume you finished the DLC and rolled the credits. Now, depending on the types of berries you use to make your donut will determine its dominant flavor. You can keep an eye on the flavor values of the berries you're using on the left, and then see it all add up on the right in this diagram here. If the dominant flavor is sweet, then you're more likely to see Humongo Power, Teensy Power, Alpha Power, and Sparkling Power. Alpha and Sparkling Power is what you want. Sparkling Power has a chance to affect the shiny odds of specific Pokemon types, or if you're very lucky, all Pokemon types. These are the other 4 flavors here, and here are the powers that they can yield. Noting Encounter Power doesn't really increase the number of spawns like it did in Scarlet and Violet, but instead decreases the respawn time of Pokemon in Hyperspace Wild Zones should you catch them or knock them out. Now, the mechanics behind donut making is similar to that of sandwich making in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which gave you guaranteed ways to boost shiny odds, encounter rates, and more. Now, unfortunately, with donut making, while you can use certain berries to narrow down the types of bonuses the donuts may yield, you cannot 100% guarantee, at least at the time of making this video, specific bonuses. I even tested making the exact same donuts with the exact same ingredients at the exact same date and time, and still got different results. So sadly, making donuts can't be manipulated by your Switch's system time like the item printer could in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So sadly, you'll instead be at the mercy of RNG. Now, as you choose berries for your donut, you'll see your flavor score go up, as well as what specific flavors are contributing to that overall number. There's a lot of conflicting info on how this affects donut bonuses, so I'll try to be as clear as I can. If the overall flavor score for your donut is between 0 and 95, then there will be no chance for any bonus effects. In a lot of cases, but not all cases, if your overall flavor score is between 100 to 195, then you'll have a chance of receiving a level 1 power. I say not all cases because you could use 4 Rosalie berries, for example, to get your overall flavor score to 140, but you still won't get any bonuses from doing this. But if you use 5 Rosalie berries that put your overall flavor score to 175, then you will get a bonus. Likewise, using 5 Oran berries to give you an overall flavor score of 100 won't do anything either, but using 6 Oran berries to increase it slightly to 120 will produce a flavor bonus. So it's definitely dependent on the types of berries that you use. Now, you 100% won't be making donuts this week anyway, so it's information that you can just disregard. If the overall flavor score is between 200 to 395, then you'll have a chance of receiving a level 1 power or a level 2 power. And if the overall flavor score is above 400, then you'll have a chance of receiving a level 1 power, a level 2 power, or a level 3 power. Make sweet your dominant flavor, and then you'll have a great chance of generating alpha power or sparkling power. In the context of shiny hunting, sparkling power can lower your base shiny rate odds to as low as 1 in 1024 or 1 in 585 if you have the shiny charm. If the sparkling power donut you use is level 3, then the first Pokemon that spawns in and matches that sparkling power type will be shiny. If you're using an all-type sparkling power donut, it will simply be the first Pokemon that spawns in upon your arrival. And in the case of alpha hunting, you can increase the base 1% alpha chance for Pokemon in Hyperspace Wild Zones to as high as 51%. Even 21% at alpha power 2 is higher than anywhere else in the base game. Now, using Hyperspace berries will net you larger flavor scores, and the higher the calories the berries, the higher chance your star rating will be. The star rating and the number of calories that come with it is more to do with the amount of time you'll get to spend in Hyperspace Wild Zones, as well as what the increased level of your Pokemon will be upon entering those Wild Zones. If you're looking to hunt for a Pokemon that appears in a 2-star Hyperspace Wild Zone, for example, using a 5 or even a 4-star donut is overkill and a bit of a waste. So try and focus on making something like a 3-star donut. And likewise, if you use a 1 or 2-star donut on a 4 or 5-star Hyperspace Wild Zone, you won't be in there for long at all. So if you're looking to shiny hunt, if you aim to make your donut sweet flavor score alone above 400, then it doesn't matter what your star rating is, as the chances to get sparkling power or alpha power will remain the same. Now, if you're serious about shiny or SHALPHA hunting and you're looking for some of the harder Hyperspace Wild Zones, then you'll definitely want to be making 4-star or even 5-star sweet flavored donuts. If you're looking to make 4-star sweet donuts, then your best bet is to use Hyper Occa berries or Hyper Chopple berries, which can help your donut reach a 4-star rating and also ensures your sweet score rises above 400 to help your chances of getting a level 3 bonus. You will sometimes get 2 sweet bonuses by using these 2 berries, but occasionally you'll only get 1 due to the plus 100 values of other flavor scores. Hyper Occa berries can be found in floating small, large, or golden Pokeballs in 3-star Hyperspace Wild Zones, while Hyper Chopple berries can be found the same way also in 3-star Hyperspace Wild Zones. Cerebi says at the time of making this video that Hyper Chopple berries could also be found in 4-star Hyperspace Wild Zones, but after a couple of hours of testing, both with and without Item Power Berries 3, I'm still yet to see one. Your donut doesn't have to be specifically just filled with Hyper Occa and Hyper Chopple berries, you just need to have used enough of them to get your sweet score past 400. And then, as long as the other berries you use get your donut to 4 stars, while at the same time keeping your other flavor scores relatively low, then that should be enough to roll for a decent donut. Now, if you're looking to make 5-star sweet donuts, then the best and mostly your only options are to use Hyper Tanga berries and Hyper Haven berries. Haben? I don't know. These can both be found in floating small, large, or golden Pokeballs in both 4 or 5-star Hyperspace Wild Zones. You can use 8 Hyper Tanga berries or even 7 and 1 other strong berry to guarantee yourself a 5-star donut, or you can use 7 Haven berries only. Noting though, this will put your fresh flavor power over 400 also, and could affect your chances of rolling for sparkling or alpha power. You will though want to hold on to these 5-star donuts for 5-star Hyperspace Wild Zones. I'll cover what Pokemon can spawn in which zones in the next section. Now, if you like, you don't even need to use Hyperspace berries to have a chance of getting a good donut for alpha hunting. Across Lumiose City, there are a number of berry shops that sell different berries, and a small number of these shops can sell Rosalie berries. The easiest shop to get to is to fly to Sushi High Roller, head down the alley just right of it, and then talk to this vendor here who can sell you this berry. Annoyingly though, only one at a time. So spam the menu again and again to build up your berries, and then once you think you have enough, head back to Hotel Z to make your Rosalie berry donut. donuts. By using 8 of these berries, you'll get at least a 2-star donut with a 200 sweet power score. This donut is more than enough to hunt Pokemon in 1 or 2-star Hyperspace Wild Zones, and you'll have a chance of getting one bonus that can be level 1 or even level 2 Humungo, Teensy, or Alpha Power. Sadly though, from testing, 8 of these berries can't give you sparkling power. Now, as mentioned, the bonuses received from donut making are random, and you'll run out of berries pretty quickly trying to chase that perfect donut. But that doesn't mean you can't do some save file shenanigans to re-roll for better donuts without having to waste your berries and farm more. First things first, you need to understand how save files work in this game in order to re-roll and manipulate your donuts without wasting your berries. Ever since Generation 3, Pokemon games have had a backup save built in. In the event your save file gets corrupted, the game can revert to its backup save to restore your game, and then upon saving again, you'll generate a new backup save, and so on. In the case of Legends ZA, your game will save either automatically in certain situations, such as catching a Pokemon or fast traveling somewhere. And it's by using fast traveling, your game performs a backup save. So in the event your main save file does get corrupted, it can revert back to the last time you fast traveled, and then pop you back to the last Pokemon Center you used. Just to demonstrate how this works, here's me entering Wild Zone 1 and then catching this first fletchling here. After catching, let's do a quick fast travel again back to the Wild Zone 1 entrance, and then once here, let's go to the home menu, close the game, and reload back in. Now from the title screen, you press on your controller at the same time, up, B, and X, which will take you to this screen that will show you your backup save that you can restore from. In this case, again, it will be the last time we fast traveled. Upon restoring from backup, the game will place me back at the last Pokemon Center I used, but if I check my Pokemon boxes, we can see that the fletchling that I just caught is still there, indicating we've restored from the backup save we just made by fast traveling. Of course, you can also visually see the time and date the backup save was created as well. So with that information in mind, in the case of donut resetting, I recommend first using the Vert Pokemon Center, as it's the nearest to Hotel Z, meaning you won't have to pan as far on the map between each save, backup, restore. You don't even need to heal your Pokemon, just talk to the nurse and then back out to see the game autosave. Then just fast travel from here to Hotel Z to make your backup save. So now that we're here, let's enter Hotel Z and begin to try and make our perfect donuts. Now here, I'm going to use 7 Hyper Tanga berries and 1 Hyper Piaffa berry to make a 5-star sweet donut. I could use 6 Hyper Tanga and 2 Hyper Piaffa. However, by doing this, the fresh flavor will rise above 100 and can at times yield 2 fresh powers instead of 2 sweet powers. Sometimes though, you could get 2 sweet and 1 fresh power, which can be useful. So by choosing the 7 Hyper Tanga berries and 1 Hyper Piaffa berry and pressing plus, the game will make the donut and generate the sweet bonuses at random and then autosave. In this case, we got Sparkling Power Dark level 2 and Alpha Power level 2. So if you wanted to reset for this, then again from here, go to the home screen, close the game, load back into the title screen, and then press at the same time up, B, and X on your controller, which will then allow you to restore from backup. If you use the Vert Pokemon Center like mentioned earlier, then you should appear back here, and all the berries you just used to make the donut you didn't want to keep will be back in your inventory, as obviously this is a version of your save that hasn't made the donut yet. From here, fly back to Hotel Z and repeat the process until you find a donut that you're looking for. Ideally, one that is both Sparkling and Alpha Power level 3. Sparkling and or Alpha Power 3 are very hard to come by, so even level 2 is more than enough in most situations. So that's donut making as it stands at the time of making this video. If there ever is an easy way that's found that can guarantee certain powers that anyone can do easily, I'll make a follow-up video. So now that we've made our donuts, let's go and hunt some Pokemon. So like I said, all the other Pokemon hunts shown so far in this video are still relevant in their own right and can be hunted in the base game without having to worry about donuts or berries or time limits, etc. should you prefer. But hunting the base game Pokemon here in the DLC, as well as the Hyperspace Pokemon only found in the DLC, is most of the time much more quicker. All 227 shiny and SHALPHA huntable Pokemon from the base game can be hunted in Hyperspace Lumiose, while out of the 132 Pokemon added in the DLC, 100 and 12 can be shiny and SHALPHA hunted, with 5 additional legendaries also shiny huntable. So by opening the map and having a look around Lumiose City, you'll see a number of Hyperspace Wild Zones or battle zones, and even side missions if you haven't completed them yet. By pressing minus, we can filter the view on the map to just see these zones and easily identify we have a bunch of Hyperspace Wild Zones ranging from 1 star to 4 star. If you don't like the zones you see, then use a bench to change the time of day and re-roll for new zones. Now, the Pokemon that can appear in Hyperspace Wild Zones are determined by its star rating. So firstly, all of these Pokemon spawns here can appear in Hyperspace Wild Zones with a 1 star or higher rating. These Pokemon here can appear in Hyperspace Wild Zones with a 2 star or higher rating. These Pokemon here can appear in Hyperspace Wild Zones with a 3 star or higher rating. These Pokemon here can appear in Hyperspace Wild Zones with a 4 star or higher rating. And these Pokemon here can appear in Hyperspace Wild Zones with a 5 star rating, which can be found through special scans. More on them in a sec. Before attempting any of these zones, I recommend ensuring you have a recent backup save. Again, simply fast travel to anywhere on the map to create a backup, as if you don't find a shiny or SHALPHA you're looking for, you'll be able to restore from backup and get back the donut you consumed. Now, by looking at the Pokemon available in the Hyperspace Wild Zones on your map, you'll see some of the main spawns that you'll encounter in that zone, as well as the size of the zone itself. From experience, you mostly want to be looking for small Hyperspace Wild Zones where possible, as this will ensure a greater number of spawns are close enough to you once you enter that you can reset and re-roll for easily. So for example, if we enter this small Hyperspace Wild Zone, it's either going to spit us out in this small section of Lumiose City, which is very ideal, or sometimes in the smaller Canal sewers. Thankfully though, we've popped up in a great location here in Lumiose City and can see a bunch of spawns immediately around us. Now firstly, like the spawns in the actual sewers in the game or in Lysandre Labs, there may be some spawns nearby that are within 50 meters of you but aren't spawned in yet. In the case of this zone, there are sometimes Pokemon close enough on the hill that won't actually be spawned in yet until you run a little bit forward to them and generate them in. Once you do this and you haven't aggravated anything, this is when you want to start spamming fly resets back to your Hooper portal. As you spam fly resets, you'll be generating new spawns each time. Sometimes though, you may have to wait a second or two to generate the spawns that are further in. But if the spawns you're looking for are close enough, then spam away as fast as you can to ensure you're re-rolling as many spawns as possible within the time limits, denoted by how many calories you have left in the top left corner. Because you'll be spamming resets so quickly by doing this, you won't at times get a good enough look at all the spawns in the area, so it can be hard to visually see if you've spawned in a shiny. So I recommend every now and then press A instead to bring up the menu asking if you want to enter the portal and leave the area. This will keep everything spawned in on screen, but will pause the timer, allowing you to pan around and zoom in, etc. to check your spawns to see if you've generated any shinies or SHALPHAs. Like in the base game, if you've spawned a shiny, then that spawn will always remain as a shiny and can never be re-rolled for a SHALPHA, unless you either catch it or spawn in 10 more shinies, at which case the oldest shiny will be lost. Unlikely, but possible. If during the process you accidentally spam A on the portal and it tries to take you back to Lumiose City, then quickly close your game before it auto-saves and reload back in to find yourself where you last saved in the Hyperspace Wild Zone. Now for me personally, most of the time I simply use an Alpha Power 2 donut with no sparkly power. So my shiny odds here are 1 in 1024 with a shiny charm and alpha spawns at 21%, which a lot of the time is more than enough to net me a SHALPHA. However, if you do find yourself in a situation where your time in the Hyperspace Wild Zone runs out and you haven't found the shiny or SHALPHA you're hunting yet, then simply like with donut resetting, restore your backup from the title screen by pressing up, B and X together to then restore from the backup save you created before attempting the Hyperspace Wild Zone hunt. You'll then be able to travel back to the same Hyperspace Wild Zone you were initially hunting in and try again. You may also notice that while the spawns will be the same, even though sometimes their image may also change on the map, their locations can actually change. So if before you were hunting something that was further away from your spawn in the Hyperspace Wild Zone, restoring from backup and re-entering the same zone may put that Pokemon nearer to you. So that's the fastest method for re-rolling for shinies or SHALPHAs in small Hyperspace Wild Zones. In terms of medium and large Hyperspace Wild Zones, you can use this same method, but you'll be at the mercy of where the Hooper portal will actually spit you out, which isn't something that can be re-rolled for. So ideally, especially in medium and large hyperspace wild zones, you want to spawn in on a roof, as not only will you be re-rolling for anything on the roof within 50 meters of you every time you reset back to the entrance, but you'll also be re-rolling for spawns below you as well, and have a great vantage point while doing so. Likewise, if your Hooper Portal is a ground spawn, you won't be actually re-rolling for any roof Pokemon, as they won't be spawned in, and also you won't be able to as easily see any ground spawns that may be near you as well. You can have a quick scope of the area to identify any Pokemon that are near enough to your ground portal spawn, and if you're happy with what you see, then spam away at the entrance to re-roll the spawns, and then check them every now and then. Now, one thing unique to Hyperspace Wild Zones are horizontal Holovators, which can shoot you across the area really fast. You can use these in many cases to your advantage, as a lot of the time they can easily take you far enough away from a group of Pokemon to despawn them, and then put you right back close enough to re-roll for new spawns. Your time limit doesn't count while you're in motion, but will start to go down again in the brief period before using the Holovator again. But it is a very brief moment, making this another effective way you can shiny or SHALPHA hunt Pokemon. The Holovators, both vertical and horizontal, won't always be in the same location in Hyperspace Wild Zones, but when you do find one that's perfect, it can net you a shiny or SHALPHA very effectively, such as this horizontal Holovator in the smaller sewers, which can appear in some cases and allow you to easily despawn and respawn Pokemon in this section here, which a lot of the time can be starter Pokemon. You can also in some situations do some runaway despawning and respawning for Pokemon if no fly point or Holovator are near the spawns. It's best to drop a save before doing this, as your timer will go down quickly, but you'll be able to easily close and reload and try again if this does happen. This is the least efficient method to hunt in Hyperspace Wild Zones, but it is an option nonetheless. Finally, once you complete side mission 188, you'll gain the ability to scan for special hyperspace zones every 25,000 points. Most of the time, statistically, you'll spawn in a hyperspace battle zone, which can be frustrating, but they do net you a lot of good items and hyperberries and points that will see you regain your next 25,000 points, hopefully in no time at all. Sadly, you can't restore from backup before performing a special scan, as the result will remain the same and you'll see the same special scan each time. Even if you change the time of day with bench resets, the location of the special scan zone may move on the map, but its contents will still remain the same. You also can't create a backup save when you're close to 25,000 points and then collect those last few points you need, and then run instead of fly to the Rust Syndicate and perform a special scan, and then restore from backup and recollect those last few points you need again and repeat, as even by doing all of this, the result from the special scan will remain the same each time. So simply the result for your next special scan is determined even before collecting the next 25,000 points you need. So at the time of making this video, sadly, you're at the mercy of RNG. But if you do get lucky, like in the example we've been using, you'll spawn in a 5-star Hyperspace Wild Zone to net you some of those rare to find Pokemon. The 5-star Hyperspace Wild Zone could contain any of these Pokemon that I just showed here earlier, or they also could contain a legendary or mythical Pokemon. In terms of mythicals, you can find Keldeo or Meloetta in these zones, but frustratingly, they are shiny locks, because of course. You can, however, find 5 legendaries, including Latias, Latios, Cavalion, Terrakion, and Virizion, and all of these can be shiny hunted. And even better, they can be affected by sparkling power, meaning you can get your shiny odds for these legendaries down to as low as 1 in 585. Now, all of these 5 Pokemon appear in their own unique sections of Hyperspace Lumiose. Most are easy enough to figure out yourself how to despawn and respawn, but if you wanted specific details on the exact moment the game generates a new spawn, then Anubis on Twitter has given a video demonstration for all 5 that shows the fastest ways. For Virizion, as shown here, you can use the runaway method from this section of the map here to reroll for a new spawn fairly quickly. Obviously, you want to give yourself enough time to check the spawn and try and catch it before the timer runs out. And of course, save beforehand if you do find the shiny. For Cavalion, this specific section by the stairs here can help easily and quickly reroll for a new spawn, and it can also even be rerolled for on the ice here without any Pokemon getting in your way. For Terrakion, you can use the vertical Holovator method, covered extensively in this video, to reroll for by saving before initially traveling up, and then check the spawn and then soft reset and repeat until you find a shiny. Or you could try the horizontal Holovator method outlined here, which can help easily reroll for a new spawn without having to reset. For Latios, the vertical Holovator method is best, but you can use the runaway method also to hunt for it. Just know though that as shown here, you do have to run pretty far and over many obstacles to reroll for the next spawn. And finally, the best shiny legendary in my opinion, Latias, can be rerolled for by running between these sections here on the roof. This one is very easy to know to spawn in and out of existence, so hopefully it won't take you too long to find a shiny. And that's shiny and alpha hunting in the Mega Dimension DLC. In summary, the DLC's pros are that you can get your shiny odds for all Pokemon in Hyperspace Wild Zones down to as low as 1 in 585 with the shiny charm, and you can increase the alpha chance of a spawn to as high as 51%. Compare that to a 1 in 1024 shiny chance for Pokemon in the base game, with 5% alpha spawns in Wild Zones and up to 20% alpha spawns in several other locations in the game. It's a no-brainer. The DLC is far more efficient to hunt in. The DLC also features many more spawns of rare Pokemon like the starters, if you can find them, allowing you to easily hunt Pokemon which were initially very hard to find before the DLC came out. And again, if you don't find what you're looking for, it's very easily resettable in the DLC to try your luck again without wasting resources. However, the cons are it's obviously very grindy, and you will be collecting a lot of berries and making many donuts to then hunt Pokemon within a time limit. It's also hard to find certain Pokemon in the DLC unless you're lucky, so you will be bench resetting to reset the portal spawns a lot. And of course, the special scans for 5-star portal Pokemon is another massive grind, so again, you will be at the mercy of the game and what it chooses to give you. If this puts you off, then every other base game method covered throughout this video will be your best alternative option, should that be how you want to hunt. And with that, that brings us to the end of this full game Pokemon Legends ZA Shiny and SHALPHA hunting guide. Again, if you're serious about Shiny or SHALPHA hunting every Pokemon in the game, then I absolutely recommend the DLC, as you'll be saving yourself a lot of time over the base game, especially with a fossil Pokemon. But at the same time, if you prefer hunting at your own pace without the worry of having to relentlessly grind for Hyper Berries, then all of the base game hunts I've covered throughout this now 3-hour video will be your best bet at finding those hard to find shinies or SHALPHAs. Thank you so much for watching this video. It's taken a lot of research over the past couple of months and countless rewrites to complete, so I hope you learned something that you can take away to benefit your own hunts. Coming in at over 40 gigabytes, creating a full game shiny hunting guide like this is likely something I won't do again, but I've had fun making this one nonetheless. If you made it to the end, comment SHALPHA below to increase your chances of finding a shiny by 1000%. And hey, if you're new to this channel, feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I've got a lot more Pokemon content on the way and can't wait to share it all with each and every one of you. My name's highly Instagram, but you can call me Matt, and as always, may all your shiny hunts be quick. Take care.